5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! And live from the Susanna Squaducci, it is Pynchon Pals. 1956, the new year is ringing in. Look at that, it's Benny Profane right over there. He's peering over the edge like always. And Ploy is here, and Andrew Tillett is here.
Hey, Patrick. Hi, Duri.
And Duri Long is also here?
Well, hello.
Wow, if you're looking around, what exciting sights do you see here on the deck, the foredeck of the Susanna Squaducci for New Year's 1956?
We've got a nice glass of mulled wine that I heated up from last night. And wait, is that Shore Patrol pulling up? Everyone hide.
Woo 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 woo! Oh no! Duri, get down. Play in the space with us.
I've never been very good at improvising. I liked the mulled wine Andrew was suggesting, though, so maybe I also have a glass of mulled wine.
I think that's good.
I'm actually drinking mulled wine right now.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Welcome to Pynchon Pals, a podcast about finally reading Thomas Pynchon. If you're listening to this on the day it comes out, I believe it is, in fact, New Year's, or is it New Year's or New Year's Eve? Which one is the Wednesday? Wednesday is New Year's Eve, so happy New Year's Eve. Maybe listen to that. If you start this episode 5 seconds before midnight, it'll sync up perfectly, and you can ring in the new year with us. Thank you for joining us. Let's see. I have here, to start out, an email that we got in from Jay. And as we mentioned last time, we are looking for emails for a Q&A episode that we'll be doing soon enough. Andrew, do you want to chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. Patrick said we're looking for some emails for our post epilogue / wrap up episode. We're going to do sort of a Q&A about V. We've gotten a lot of great questions, which is why Patrick has pulled this one. He texted me, we don't need this for the Q&A. We've got so many good questions. Let's preview one now. But there's still time. This is the penultimate episode. It's this episode, one more episode, and then the Q&A. That's right.
Yes, correct.
So send in your questions. It's never too late to get a good question. Again, we've gotten a bunch of good ones, but you can bump your way onto the top list. Just do your best.
Indeed, you can. So this first question, as I mentioned, comes in from Jay, and I will admit, it's not exactly a question from Jay, but Jay has more of a comment than a question, and says, "You've mentioned Taylor Swift several times, but not this connection, which I'm going to link y'all in the Discord right now."
My goodness.
What?
Whoa.
Do you want to read what appears at the top of this page?
Ancestor chart showing how Taylor Swift is the 9th cousin 2 times removed to Thomas Pynchon.
American novelist.
So we're gonna So Thomas Pynchon. His father, Thomas Ruggles Pynchon. His father, William Henry Chichele Pynchon.
I feel like you get back to the 1800s and names just start getting less and less familiar. Yeah.
William Henry's mother, Annie Payne Cogswell's mother, Lucretia Ann Payne's mother, Alicia Payne's father, Solomon Payne's father, Reverend Solomon Payne's mother, Rebecca Doane's mother, Hannah Bangs' father, Edward Bangs. Duri, do you want to go back down the other side?
Yeah. And so now we're going back down on Taylor Swift's side. Edward Bangs' son, Jonathan Bangs' son, Thomasine Bangs.
Daughter, I guess.
Daughter, Thomasine.
Mary Joseph, yeah. Daughter, Thomasine.
Never heard the name Thomasine before.
Thomas Sinewave?
Oh, whoa. Mm.
Son, Joseph Burgess. Daughter, Lydia Burgess. Child, Orrin Kingsley. I'm just going to say names. Reverend Elanson Kingsley, Barbara Maria Jane Kingsley, Bernice Maud Thompson, Archie Dean Swift, Scott Kingsley Swift, and there we have Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift.
Wow.
Does this make us encounter either of these great American artists in any new ways?
This
Who
is sort of
wins the Nobel Prize first, Thomas or Taylor? Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. This is a sort of stencil-esque connection between two characters that we thought were formerly unconnected.
The rest of this website is kind of a wild trip. This is famouskin.com. If we look at other famous kin of Taylor Swift and we exclude some of the like ye olden times people, do you know she's fifth cousin 4 times removed to Ulysses S. Grant and fifth cousin 5 times removed to John Brown?
Wow, that one's pretty cool. I'll give her that one.
I think this is just what happens when we are respectively from the South, and the Midwest. And I think this is just what happens when you're from New England and the Northeast, and you are an old family from New England and the Northeast.
But John Brown is of Kansas.
That's true, but it probably goes way back.
Actually, I'm not sure he's from Kansas or if he
was
just
in Kansas
made a
at one
name
point.
in Kansas.
He moved to Kansas. I don't think he's from Kansas, if I remember my extra history YouTube video correctly.
My Kansas history classes in grade school were obsessed with John Brown.
John Brown's born in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that mean John Brown and Ulysses S. Grant are very closely related, or is it just happenstance that they're about the same time frame and about the same levels of distance from Taylor?
Let's see. I bet we can figure that out. This is what the people come to our podcast about Thomas Pynchon to figure out is Ulysses S. Grant and John Brown.
Write in with any other literary notable kinships that you can find on this website. We might read them on the Q&A pod.
U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth is related to John Brown, as is Post Malone, apparently. I don't see Ulysses S. Grant on here.
I want to know who did all this genealogy.
The internet?
Collectively?
Yeah, I guess so.
Genealogy is, I mean, the people on the internet who do genealogy do it. Like, I've done a little bit of genealogical research, and I occasionally have to send angry emails to people who've claimed relatives of mine erroneously in their family trees, and I have to explain to them how my grandma Dolores is not their great aunt Dolores. And
wow, what a specific online community.
Show like census records to show that the cities don't match up with the rest of the families.
Wow. John Brown is the 6th cousin of Ulysses Simpson Grant. What are we talking about? Thomas Pynchon?
Thomas Pynchon. Close relative of Taylor Swift.
We're talking about close relative of Taylor Swift, Thomas Pynchon, and specifically chapters 12, 13, and 14 of V, a book.
14, 15, and 16, right? 14,
That's
15,
what
and
I
16,
meant. 14,
please.
15, and 16 of V, a book we're all reading for the first time. It's been a minute, listener, since we've recorded, so we're a little rusty at this, but we're doing our best for you amidst this cold, wintry time. What'd y'all think of these chapters? We have a three-headed chapter.
Is this our first time doing today. 3 chapters in one episode?
I believe it is.
These were nice, mostly short and sweet, except for the 3rd chapter, part 1. That was not short and sweet. That was long and annoying. But the rest of it was short and sweet, and I liked it.
I don't know about sweet, but short.
Sweet and more of a sweet to like read easily. It wasn't. I sort of blew through it. You know what I mean? The content, as always,
is not so sweet.
Never sweet.
There is certainly less historical rabbit holes to dive down in
only a couple
these chapters compared to it's no chapter 3, it's no Florentine chapter, it's certainly no Fopple's house chapter.
I don't know how the epilogue is going to wrap up, but I feel like this is not necessarily how I thought the book would be coming to a close.
Yeah, that's true. I got into chapter 16, and I was sort of starting part 3, and it's only a couple pages long, and I was like, this is technically the end of the book. Like epilogue, like this is
The epilogue is
the
also
end.
subtitled 1919, so I suspect it's a flashback. I think this might be where we end most of our present day characters.
I was like, yeah, this is the end of our time with Benny, presumably. Like, unless
That's
somehow
wild.
Benny's parents are in Valletta in 1919, which they might be. I was like, yeah, this is how Benny goes out, like not with a bang, but with a whimper and a pair of Bermuda shorts.
Well, shall we hop into it in order to get to our fleeting moment with Benny towards the end here with chapter 14, V in Love?
Let's dive in.
V in Love.
So it's 1913, and Melanie Le Maudit, literally cursed hour, arrives in Paris at age 15 to dance in a new ballet entitled The Rape of the Chinese Virgins, choreographed by Monsieur Satin, with music by Vladimir Porcipec, financed in part by a mysterious woman known only as, wait for it, V. Melanie has been abandoned by both her mother and by her father, who molested her, and the chapter dances over and under varieties of Freudian sexuality, especially in the case of Melanie's affair with V, who uses the young dancer as an objectified fetish. In a dark interpolation of the real-life chaos at the premiere of Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, Melanie is accidentally impaled on stage, sending V to parts unknown.
I'm jumping straight to the end here, but because you mentioned it, can you elaborate a little bit on what happened in The Rite of Spring?
So, yes, in the premiere of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, basically it seems like a big kind of brawl, fist fight broke out. It would seem that like a lot of opera houses and stuff in Paris at the time, like a lot of other places, had were divided into classes, and a little bit of class conflict occurred physically on the floor of the opera house for one reason or another. People were very derisive, like, of the ballet, I think. And yeah, basically a big fight broke out. It was in all of the papers.
Okay, but no one was impaled on stage.
No one was impaled on
Rite of
stage,
Spring.
but
Okay.
it was like a sort of big incident that made all of the press. The press was extremely hostile to the play or to the ballet. Yeah, that seems to be the main relation here, is that this is also a ballet in Paris where a kind of brawl is breaking out in the audience as the play is going on, or as the ballet is going on uninterrupted.
Gotcha.
Until, in this case, it is interrupted by the death of the lead actress and dancer.
Yeah, so just to situate ourselves, because I had to situate myself, this is 15 years after the Fashoda incident in Cairo, and it's just before the start of World War I?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's also notably the late summer, also known as flip-flop season.
Yeah, we are in
July
the dog
clock.
days. Your piece of trivia about Sirius the Star and its relation to the dog days of summer comes up in this very chapter. Congratulations, Andrew.
Thank you.
So we are introduced to this young woman, 15-year-old Melanie, and we are introduced to her kind of amidst several extremely dark sexual fantasies, in large part relating to her, as I mentioned, sort of molestation at the hands of her father, who appears to have totally fled the country. Nobody knows where he is. She's been abandoned by her mother as well.
Did we gather that he fled the country because, like, the incestual molestation came out? Or was it for some other different reason?
I didn't really get that vibe, just because the mom seems to just be on vacation, and it's said that I think it says that the French attaché has his
assets?
stuff. Which makes it sound more like an international incident. Maybe? I'm not sure. Possibly.
Yeah, this feels of a piece with just sort of like international incidents crop up constantly wherever V is concerned or wherever Stencil is fantasizing. So here is yet another one that has led to this young dancer being basically deposited at this ballet house. She has a stage name, Mademoiselle Jarretière, which is the French word for garter, which is a certain kind of stage name you could give a 15-year-old, I suppose.
So she had been in school in Belgium, right? She'd been at like a boarding school, and then her father flees Europe, and then her mom goes on summer break. And so then that's who she gets her 1,500 francs and decides to drop out and go to Paris. Does this feel very like Evan Godolphin getting a letter from Hugh to be like, show up in Florence? That was my first thought, that sort of parallel of receive a letter and then move across Europe, and then obviously going into the relationship with V.
Yeah, I think there is certainly a comparison there. Melanie is also constantly hoping that it will rain. And we get, once again, as we kind of saw in the confessions, Fausto's confessions, this interrelation between inner psychology and the weather outside, basically, where she is, as seen, for instance, in Michael Mann's Miami Vice remake. It is constantly thundering, but it never, in fact, breaks out into rain at all in this chapter.
Yeah, and it seems very oppressively hot.
Yeah.
Another thing about Melanie is that he describes her as her eyes were dead, her nose French, which I thought was a interesting descriptor, and calls back to some of the other people we've seen whose eyes have been described as being like dead or empty.
And whose noses have been described with a certain sense of nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
So Melanie checks into the room at the Opera House, has, as I mentioned, this bizarre...
Check into the room at the Opera House? She's like sleeping in a closet. It's not a hotel.
Yeah,
like a props closet.
Well, there's a little, like a garret. Is that what you call it? I feel like that's the word that always shows up in sort of old timey novels.
It has an internal lock, so it must be somewhat expected that someone would be on the inside of it. It's not like a total broom closet.
It's a room. It's a room that
Is she sleeping in the green room?
She's sleeping in a room with a mannequin is the important thing that I was trying to get to. There is a mannequin in the corner who she also begins to fixate on sexually. So first she has this kind of sexual fantasy about sliding down a mansard roof, and the wind sort of caresses her as she does so, and she feels the tiles sliding along her body. And then she notices above her bed there's this large mirror that she continually sort of looks at throughout this chapter, and effectively, like, witnesses herself pleasuring herself, causing her even more pleasure.
Well, and she seems, at one point, she seems uncomfortable. This was, like, very kind of uncomfortable to read about a 15-year-old girl. But at one point, she, like, takes off all her clothes, and then she goes to try on the, like, costume that she'll be wearing for this performance. And she says something to the effect of how she, like, finds herself, like, she's sort of disgusted by herself naked, but then when she puts on the costume, she finds herself beautiful.
Yeah, so already we are seeing in the first couple of pages, we get this fixation that Melanie has on inanimate objects, and inanimate objects being close to her body.
And reflections of herself.
Mm-hmm.
We're sort of watching herself being pleasured is the pleasure, the sort of self-voyeurism, I guess.
Which we get into, which is kind of doubled and tripled by the time we get to her affair with V later on.
Do we want to talk about this performance that she's slated to be in?
Yes,
Let's
I think we should.
It's called The Rape of the Chinese Virgins, so I feel like the title itself maybe sums up some of the challenges with the performance. But basically, like, they're dramatizing sort of like a torture and rape of a virgin in a way that I feel like calls back to some of the other torture and rape scenes that we have seen with Fina and Sarah, but they're putting it on stage in a sort of dramatic fashion. And it's being done with this like 15-year-old girl who I'm sure does not have an intimacy coordinator in 1913 and has gone through these like rape experiences herself already in her life. So it's kind of, I don't know, in some sense it felt to me like they were dramatized, like it's almost like an onstage dramatization of some of the trauma that she has gone through.
I think in the wake of the Fina and Sarah stuff that we've seen so far, this chapter felt really like too much. Like I was like, there's too much rape of like underage women in this book.
I was also feeling that, Andrew. I was like, yeah, it was a little much.
So the plot of this play, which again is choreographed by this fellow by the surname of Satin, however you want to pronounce it, with music by this fellow Vladimir Porkypek. Porkypek is French for porcupine. So we have another porcupine man here.
Balloon girls and porcupine men.
There you go. Wow. Doesn't that just sum it all up right there? Melanie is playing Su Fong, which, according to a reference in J. Cary Grant's Companion to V, is Mandarin for phoenix. So again, sort of like in an ironic, this part kind of rises into the air at the end of the play, and or at the end of the ballet, and this is, again, I guess, kind of like an irony played there. And she is, as the text says, tortured to death defending her purity against the invading Mongolians. But her handmaidens in this ballet are all performed by these automata that are provided by a German engineer.
Perhaps Mondagen?
Mondagen would have been like 13 on this. I think, wasn't Mondagen like 22 in 1922? There's too much going on.
There's too much. I've lost the thread. Just another German engineer.
Yeah, any number of German engineers, but these automata do have a certain resemblance, I guess, in the way that they are automata to the Shroud and Shock mannequins that we encountered earlier, as does the mannequin who Melanie kind of wraps herself around in her bed.
I did like the idea of the automata playing the zither. It's very like Chuck E. Cheese country band kind of thing. That was a fun image.
Yes, it's all fun until it's not Chuck E. Cheese and it's actually whatever this ballet is.
Yeah, and I maybe don't need to point this out, but obviously a lot going on here, sort of with colonialism, also with the sort of portrayal of these Chinese virgins by this like French girl. So ostensibly like no one in the show is actually Chinese, perhaps unsurprisingly for 1913 in an opera house in France. But they're portraying this sort of violence enacted in a different sort of exoticized place.
Yeah, we are kind of in one of the heights of Orientalism in the arts. So this is the exoticization, but also the fetishization of these stories, this violence out of the East, as it were.
Yeah, and later we see that V's apartment is sort of entirely decorated in sort of like Oriental, using the word from the book here, and African stylings.
Yeah, I wonder where she got all those from.
Indeed.
Let's see. So we've talked about the mannequin. We are also introduced to this Monsieur Itagu, I guess Itag, who is a radical anti-Semite. He reads this paper, La Libre Parole, and he stood among crowds to spit at Captain Dreyfus. This is a reference to a kind of scandalous French trial of accusations of anti-Semitism in the French government, where this Captain Dreyfus, who was a Jewish captain in the French army, I believe like an artilleryman or something, was tried and convicted for sending espionage secrets to Germany, but was then, I think, the trial was condemned for anti-Semitism, and the French government's handling of this was famously attacked by Émile Zola in this newspaper column entitled J'accuse, which, I guess, has given rise to the phrase j'accuse generally when you're speaking accusations to power. But that is the reference that one of the folks working behind the scenes on this ballet is reading.
Yeah. So at this point, Itagu and Satin they've sort of broken for the night, and they've gone out to get some wine and kind of hang out at a cafe. And this is where we meet V for the first time. She's the patroness of their performance.
I feel like this chapter and the next chapter, we have a lot of like people going out to get drunk together, where like one person is not super thrilled to be getting drunk with the other person. So we've got like...
That could just describe half of this book, but please go on.
Well, I feel like specifically here we have like these pairings of people who like, I don't know, we've got Itagu and Satine, and it says Satine drank wine like a Frenchman, never outright falling down drunk, but growing more unstable, more nervous as his chorus of hollow glass dancers grew, referring to his wine glasses.
Yeah, I liked this image a lot of him sort of like choreographing with the wine glasses on the table.
We get a lot of Pynchon's thoughts on which nationalities hold their liquor the best over these couple of chapters.
We do indeed.
Maybe we do a power ranking at the end.
S tier, the British, I guess?
I guess.
According to Thomas Pynchon. Bottom tier, the Americans.
So are they at like a cabaret?
Yeah, so the actual performance is going to be in a full-fledged theater. They name drop, but whose name I've forgotten. But yeah, the sort of day-to-day practicing that we see for most of this chapter is happening in like just a cabaret and the like workspace around it.
Yes, and they have like a variety of different shows. So there's a magic lantern show on this particular evening. So sort of like early cinematographic, like moving pictures type stuff. I guess this is sort of like a zoetrope would be the magic lantern. You know, one of those things that like spins around.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, like kind of like I feel like cycloramas were kind of inspired by them.
Well, so cyclorama is like when the room is spinning around. The zoetrope is when you have like it's like a little thing on a cylinder, and it's got slits cut in it, and you spin the cylinder, and then like the images on the inside of the cylinder look like they're moving. But this magic lantern is in fact not that. It is like a projection type thing, like a slide projector, or like a camera obscura. Could be a variety of different optical technologies that are being performed at this cabaret here.
Gotcha. And they keep mentioning something called the Black Mass,
which
kind of reminded me of was it the Dark Priest?
The Bad Priest.
Bad Priest. Yes, the Bad Priest.
So Black Masses were a certain kind of popular intellectual esoteric pastime, I guess. Like, imagine a satanic black magic version of a Catholic mass, and in the same way that at this time in history, like seances were really big, the occult was really big, all of these, again, esoteric magical practices were really big. V, the woman, seems to be part of this crowd that does these, satanic worshipings, none of which seem to be like particularly magical, but serve more as like a social function for this kind of in crowd of artists and intellectuals, quote unquote,
It seems
who are palling around.
It seems like it's just kind of an after party. Like they all leave the bar and go to Black Mass, but then they're all just kind of sitting around chatting, or in several characters' instances trying to pick up women. So yeah,
there's a somewhat well-known French novel from, I had to look up the date, 1891, called Là-bas. That's LA-BAS, or like it's sometimes translated as Down There or The Damned, by an author, Joris Karl Huysmans. And it was kind of controversial when it was published in 1891 because it's about these kind of satanic worship practices that were going on in sort of turn of the century France.
But before we get to the Black Mass,
we just meet V.
We meet V, and she's in quite the outfit.
Indeed.
I won't read the full description because it's a long paragraph, but she's wearing like a harem veil covering the lower part of her face and fastened behind to a tiny hat riotous with the plumage of equatorial birds. And then she has like a special fan with like amber stick, ostrich feathers, silk tassels, tortoiseshell pins in her hair. She's got sort of like buttoned kid shoes with patent leather at the toe and a French heel. So she's really in like high fashion here.
Yeah, her dress is compared in color to the skin color of a black person.
Yeah, and it's beat it all over.
She's just in like colonialism couture.
Yeah, like from head to toe. Including the plumage of equatorial birds, which, if anyone is interested, there is a really great This American Life podcast from a number of years ago that talks a little bit about bird. It's called The Feather Heist. Have you guys listened to that podcast?
Oh, I've listened to every This American Life episode. I know The Feather Heist.
I have not listened to every This American Life episode. In fact, this might be like one of like 2 This American Life episodes I've listened to, but I really liked it.
I'll send you my recommendation list, Duri.
Thanks, Andrew.
Andrew's skip list. It's actually just every episode of This American Life.
No.
Anyways, it's from that episode that I know what I do about equatorial bird feathers. And basically there was sort of like a whole kind of a lot of bird species like went extinct during the Victorian era, and then I think like subsequent times because people were really into wearing their plumage in various fashions and also using their plumage for like currently like for fly fishing. It's popular. It's been a long time since I listened to the podcast, but I was reminded of that by Victoria's special hat.
V's special hat, not Victoria's. Although Victoria was a, when we left her, she was a seamstress, right? Or a tailor? Wasn't she opening up a dress shop?
Well. Yeah, she is here as well. She owned a dress shop in the Rue de Quatre Septembre. So,
wow,
there's a clue for you.
So she designed it herself, is what we're saying, I assume.
Oh, I think she clearly designed it herself. That seems evident. We get this really interesting. I want to mention this paragraph that comes up here as we're introduced to V. At first, kind of without any explicit naming, like she's just described as the woman, and then eventually we'll get to her introduction properly. But there's this meditation on night and the curtain of night that I think crops up once again in the last chapter that we're reading today, when we get to Benny in Malta. So this paragraph says, the woman sat lost in watching the night, which enveloped them like a velvet teaser curtain. Itague, for all his time in Montmartre, had never seen behind it to the bare wall of the night, but had this one. And a little later on, there's this cry, strike, strike the set of night, and let us all see. And there's this, like, idea of this lurking presence behind this curtain of night, that, like, something is out there, something is behind it, and people may or may not have seen whatever it is behind the night that starts to crop up as a recurring image in these chapters. Maybe it comes up before this, but I definitely noticed it here.
I mean, I guess this is technically a stencil chapter. That's not a spoiler. So I guess it's very stencil coded for him, or for, I guess, Itagu to be concerned about the, like, what is happening behind the scenes. Like that might be a stencil impersonation we're seeing come through.
Yeah, although we get even more twisty with sort of the voice of the narrator compared to the voice of Stencil by the time we're done with this chapter.
Yeah, we get a little breaking of the fourth wall.
The fourth wall break is crazy.
The striking this out of night business feels sort of like Wizard of Oz-y. Like what's behind the curtain sort of operating all this or like causing it all to happen.
Yeah. Also famously a big automaton.
Yes.
The Wizard of Oz.
I wonder what would happen if you read this book listening to Dark Side of the Moon.
So then we cut to Melanie.
Melanie's dream.
Yeah, is having a wild dream. Where she sort of wakes up next to her mannequin and like dreams that a German who's also her father is standing over her and says you must turn over, and it gets kind of sexual, but then kind of they say to reach between your shoulder blades, and they find like this little like wind up key on her back and they wind it up, and the German / her father says, "I got you in time. You would have stopped had I not."
Yeah.
So we have this idea of like Melanie is like a wind up doll, which is interesting because she's dancing beside real sort of wind up dolls
who are
on stage.
Crafted by a German.
Yes. So she's like almost like being like she's sort of envisioning herself as one of the automata on stage created by possibly this German engineer.
Yeah, she woke up not screaming but moaning as if sexually aroused, which again reminds me of these like bizarre sexualized smiles that we keep seeing on the face of violated women in this book.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with femininity and martyrdom in this book, which maybe when we get to our sort of epilogue and wrap-up episode, we can reflect on the place of all of that over the course of this novel. Maybe it'll all sort of string together by the time we get to the end.
We will see.
Surely.
Speaking of novels about young girls being violated, they encounter a writer who is writing a bunch of novels about young girls being violated.
Who also seems to like want to do that in real life and or do that in practice. Sounds like like the worst of the worst person to sit down next to at a bar, like Itagu, who is himself not a good person, but sits down at this bar next to this guy, and he's like, "Oh God, I really don't want to talk to Gerfo," and then Gerfo goes on and on and on about these sort of like pedophilic novels that he's writing,
which is also very like turn of the century French novel. You know, there's I think, especially amidst this after party after the Black Mass, which V is also at, and she's burning cigarette holes in the skirt of another young woman.
Yeah, what's like wild turn.
I mean, this is in a big way. We keep talking, and as does our good friend Herbert Stencil, we keep talking about the cyclicality of this decadent whole sick crew. And here again, we have another kind of whole sick crew of Itagu and Gerfo, the writer, and V, who's obsessed with several of these young girls, and Porky Peck, the avant-garde composer who makes these dissonant, discordant scores.
Yeah, I was also reminded of the whole sick crew here. I feel like the whole sick crew would absolutely hold a Black Mass.
Absolutely.
They kind of do every night at the Rusty Spoon, right? Like that is their, or I guess maybe they go to the bar, they go to the Rusty Spoon, then they hold the Black Mass at like Rooney's or something. But
yeah.
I think we've seen this type of hangout a couple of times, just without the proper name.
I do want to call out that V has a ring, and on top of the ring is an arm with a hand that holds her cigarette.
Yeah, I was trying to picture that. I was like, how big is this arm? I guess it's like, it has to be like sizable enough to like stabilize the cigarette.
I mean, if you look up like cigarette holder rings, you can find some of these. This one, I guess, is just sort of like intricately carved.
Oh yeah. There's some that like look like snakes. Interesting.
Yeah.
What a vibe this woman gives off.
It's a certain kind of vibe, that's for sure. But you get the sense here, I think, especially with the writer, that, I don't know, like, a lot of this book has been about reflecting on the role of the writer and of writing. And in the context of this book, having a writer come in and talk about writing books that victimize women seems interesting for a book that has frequently positioned young women in the role of victims. I don't know if that's just kind of bald-faced lampshading of the, I know what I'm doing stripe, or what to make of it exactly, but it's something.
Yeah, especially I feel like we get, like, as we were saying, like we get some fourth wall breaking a little bit later on. And we do have the discussion of writing back in Maestral's Apologia. So I do think that might be continuing in a vein of kind of the role of writing.
Yeah, just a little later on, there's the line, what would Gerfaut make of her? Speaking of Melanie here, what would Gerfaut make of her? A wanton, in body if he could, in the pages of a manuscript, most certainly. Writers had no moral sense.
Yeah. There's this sense, I felt like throughout this chapter, there was this like pervasive sense that kind of everyone is like leering at Melanie. Like everyone that encounters this 15-year-old girl is like trying to see how they can molest her. Like Satine is, like Gerfaut is, like V is, her father molested her. And I just feel like it kind of echoes something that I've seen throughout this book, which is like this overwhelming sense of like vulnerability for like young women, where like they don't have protectors and they're just like sort of out in the world, and everyone is sort of like looking to like exploit them in some way, and many of them end up falling into sort of like horrible situations. And I'm kind of just running with my train of thought here, but it's interesting that Victoria Wren is another young woman who was sort of out in the world, like a little bit without a protector, especially, as she kind of separated a little bit from her family. And she seems less vulnerable than a lot of the other young women that we see portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like when we see her for the first time in Egypt, or, I mean, she definitely is the sort of victim becomes perpetrator by like these later chapters, but
yeah, I mean, I think like we see her for the first time in Egypt. She seems like a little bit more of a master of her own destiny than some of the other young women that we've encountered, who feel more like they're like falling vulnerable to like the powers in the world around them. And then she kind of strikes out on her own, right? When we see them in Florence, like she's kind of living on her own as a young woman. And I feel like we've seen that go horribly awry for a lot of the other young women. And I guess it does go horribly awry for V later on, but she kind of goes through this whole period of her sort of like womanhood and life where she like is powerful as a young woman and then an older woman. Like she holds a sense of power that some of the other women that we encounter do not. I don't know if I'm totally off on a limb here.
No, I think
I agree with that.
Yeah, and it is also a movement, a kind of 20th century movement. She starts out as an aristocrat and becomes bourgeois. Like she becomes a business owner, effectively. She owns a dressmaking shop. She's clearly wealthy, but a lot of that wealth, as we see from her apartment and her general comportment, is the result of colonialist influence and extraction.
Yeah, is she like still getting wealth from her family?
Hard to say.
Yeah, I've been a little unclear on that.
She definitely, I mean, compared to the other young women we've seen, has a huge financial leg up. She's also in Egypt. She's like 18, right? Like she's significant. I mean, considered compared to Melanie or to like, well, I guess Fina's maybe 18, but that's sort of different.
She just like hasn't carried with her the same like sense of like, I feel like reading about these other women, I'm like terrified for what's going to happen to them on like every page. Like I feel like everyone is sort of like coming for them, and when is the horrible disaster going to befall them? And they all sort of befall horrible disasters. Whereas V seems sort of like strangely autonomous for her time, like world traveling, living on her own, benefactor, patroness.
Until she becomes autonomous.
Go on.
And then
Good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know what befalls her then.
Yeah. Not trying to make V into like a girl boss of the early 1900s in any way, shape, or form. But she is portrayed in a different light from some of these other young women.
Yeah. Eventually, she lays her hand on Melanie's thighs and asks, "Do you know what a fetish is? Something of a woman which gives pleasure, but is not a woman, a shoe, a locket, une jarretière. You are the same, not real, but an object of pleasure."
It's an interesting line because I feel like we've talked a lot in this book about the acquisition of objects. And it seems like V likes to acquire objects ranging from her like interesting comb that she had to like all of these artifacts of kind of colonialism in her like apartment. And now she's sort of acquiring a young woman that she's calling an object.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see, I guess, more of a window into this later when one of the French guys talks about what V had told him about their relationship, but she's very upfront about the fact that she's not interested in Melanie because she thinks she's like an interesting person. She's interested just as like an object to use, and we see that when we get their sort of explanation of what their like sexual encounter is like.
Yeah, and like even just like an object to look at. Like it seems like a lot of their sexual relationship is V just sort of looking at Melanie.
Yeah, it's all based on like her V's voyeurism of Melanie's voyeurism of Melanie.
Which, if, let's say, hypothetically, we were going to diagram that situation.
Looks kind of like a V.
Yeah, there's two lines there.
Do we get some more talk about decadence and history? Say it with me now. Being like a sine wave.
If history were cyclical, we'd now be in a decadence.
I mean, this is just like the thesis of V, right? Itagu says, a decadence is a falling away from what is human, and the further we fall, the less human we become. Because we are less human, we foist off the humanity we have lost on inanimate objects and abstract theories.
Yeah, I feel like that echoes some of what did Maestral also talk about that in his chapter, I think.
Yeah. Although it's disagreed with here a little bit, where we have a couple of perspectives here, one of which is Kolsky, who is a Russian revolutionary, who is a follower of Bakunin, Marx, and Ulyanov, better known as Vladimir Lenin, who is dreaming towards the revolutionary future, which, unlike a sine wave, has sort of a discrete end point after which everything is changed, in a proper revolutionary sense.
Yeah, and he is sort of accused of talking of people as if they were point clusters or curves on a graph, which I thought was an interesting description of thinking of people as sort of data points.
Mm-hmm. Thinking of people as data points, and also, I think this conversation is an interesting one of people disagreeing about the extent to which you can make these kind of diagrams of history and its repetitions. Kolsky says at one point, It is a bleak world we live in, Monsieur Itag. Atoms collide, brain cells fatigue, economies collapse, and others rise to succeed them, all in accord with the basic rhythms of history. Perhaps she is a woman. Women are a mystery to me, but her ways are at least measurable. Itagu. Should really look up how to pronounce that.
Just keep picking a different way each time.
Just like Porpentine, way back when. Basically says that, like, well, you're assuming that there's a rhythm to all of this. So then we get to V's apartment, which, as we mentioned, has, quote, black pieces of primitive sculpture, lamp in the shape of a dragon, silks, Chinese red. And then the voice of the novel gets really interesting, if this is indeed a kind of stencilized version as it is set up as being beforehand. The narrator breaks in to say, if we've not already guessed, the woman is, again, the Lady V of Stencil's mad time search. No one knew her name in Paris. Not only was she V, however, but also V in love. Herbert Stencil was willing to let the key to his conspiracy have a few of the human passions.
This was so jarring to me. The number of times in this book that we've had to sort of connect dots and be like, oh, the lady in Africa has a comb, and oh, the evil priest has an eye. And then for this, I've got so many notes so far. Like, I'm just got this sort of the like 1 inch by like 1/4 inch sticky notes that I like write little notes on and stick them in as I'm reading. For the listener. And the number of these up to this point in this chapter that are just V question mark, and for it to just say it out loud, I was pissed. Thomas Pynchon has no respect.
It's so funny. But also, we know that Herbert Stencil talks about Herbert Stencil in the third person. So this is also still kind of Herbert Stencil's voice.
Yeah.
Wild.
It is not just this section, but throughout here, I think this voice of the narrator / the voice of Stencil just kind of gets louder and louder as the chapter progresses, and eventually starts talking about sort of having read police reports on the incidents that are described or later interviews that Stencil has had. And it's just a different kind of narration, I think, than we have had previously.
Yeah, it did feel different, almost as though we're seeing the man behind the curtain of these stories.
And this has been commented on by several critics and scholars, as mentioned in the companion to V.
We're not the first people to notice this.
We're not the first people to, I mean,
gosh darn.
Look, we all noticed it without turning to the companion to V, so that give us some credit. This is also where we get sort of the start of commentary here on lesbianism and queerness in general. The Pynchon writes, lesbianism, we are prone to think, in this Freudian period of history, stems from self-love projected onto some other human object. If a girl gets to feeling narcissist, she will also sooner or later come upon the idea that women, the class she belongs to, are not so bad either. Such may have been the case with Melanie, though who could say? Perhaps the spell of incest at Serre Chaude was an indication that her preferences merely lay outside the usual exogamous heterosexual pattern which prevailed in 1913. And throughout the rest of this chapter, we start getting this idea. At least one character comes up with this like 8x8 matrix grid about this how to characterize the relationship between Melanie and V, of like, who is dominant, who is submissive, who is wearing men's clothing, who's wearing women's clothing. And the whole thing feels very much to me like a parody of the kind of Freudian medicalization of queerness and transgression. The idea that like, well, here is a, tapestry of human emotion, love, whatever you want to call it. But obviously it conforms to these particular archetypes. And that seems to be the kind of thing that Pynchon is maybe writing against in this section, parodically. Seems
generous.
Yeah.
It's generous.
Freud is such a, fucking quack. It's insane. I think I mentioned already on this pod that I had acquired a copy of Dora, and was going to read it. And I did. And I didn't talk about it for a reason. And that's because every single line made no logical sense. Not one
This is one
thing
of Freud's
he said
case
made
studies,
sense.
correct?
Yeah, it's a case study about a girl who's got some stuff going on, and not one of his diagnoses is right. And then she leaves halfway through her analysis, and he's just like, I can't believe she'd leave. We were so close to cracking this nut wide open. And it's like, dog, nothing you've said has made any sense or could possibly be correct. That's not the point. What was the point I was getting to?
The point is, does Thomas Pynchon agree with that?
Yeah, and then like Itigu's like 5th grade take on like, oh, like someone's the boy and someone's the girl. Ridiculous.
Yeah, and like this whole paragraph about lesbianism, like, was that again, like, is that Pynchon breaking the fourth wall? Is that Stencil's thoughts on lesbianism? Like the whole sentence about like her preferences laying outside the usual because she was sort of ancestrally raped by her father was buck wild to me.
Yeah. But it is a certain kind of, I don't want to speak for all Freudians, but it is a certain kind of Freudian interpretation of like, yes, trauma during childhood manifests as sexual deviance, quote unquote, as an adult.
Yeah, but it almost makes it sound like her, like, the incest was like a preference of hers.
Yeah.
And then it, again, is tying it to queerness. But anyways, I think I feel like you're giving Thomas Pynchon a generous read here.
I am trying.
I wasn't entirely sure what to make of this.
I am definitely trying to give Thomas Pynchon a generous read here, knowing that he is an author, as we have seen, who tends to work in parody and in speaking through like the voice of others in a lot of interesting opinions, including in the voice of the narrator here, which, as we just mentioned, sort of starts to get confusing at this juncture.
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity going on here in terms of like the point of view we're hearing from and like what's being parodized and what is like the thesis of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And what is Stencil's thesis of the world versus like Pynchon's thesis of the world versus Maestral's thesis of the world. There's like all these different voices, and it's a little maybe purposely hard to tease apart, you know, who's thinking what here. I'll be interested to see how this like sort of play with like narrative voice continues throughout Pynchon's other novels that we're going to read.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like my opinion on this might develop further as we like see more examples of it outside of V, and I can kind of see more of his writing style.
To my knowledge, I may be mistaken here, but I don't think any of his books are like fully in first person. Like he tends to play in this kind of very classical, novelistic, third person, limited, omniscient perspective, which allows him to do this thing of inhabiting a bunch of voices and telling you the thoughts of various characters. And I think, you know, when I was editing one of the previous episodes, I don't remember exactly which one, the three of us were having trouble figuring out if a certain thought was that of the narrator, that of Benny, or that of Rachel, because it's just like it is a sentence that is spoken that seems like it's what do you call it?
It wasn't like in quotes or attached to any.
Yes, but there's like my comparative literature degree is like curling up at the edges right now.
I can't help.
You've got this. I believe in you. Dig deep.
Third person voice.
You'll have to cut your own struggle
style.
this time.
I'll have to. I found it. Free indirect discourse.
Wow.
Ladies and germs.
New term.
Which is
ding,
this,
ding, ding.
you know, when you have the voice of the narrator chiming in of like, she looked around the room, the curtains were sad, and we get the sense that like, this is not the narrator objectively saying that the curtains are sad, but this is like the perspective of the character being reported in the voice of the narrator. Like Pynchon is using this all over the place, as do, you know, this is famously like a thing you find in Jane Austen, is a kind of master of this, or she tends to be the example that you use in literary theory classes.
And
yeah,
I was just gonna say, it just feels like I don't know, like Pynchon's like playing with us a little bit, but he made Stencil speak in the third person all the time, which just throws it into like further confusion as to who's talking. I feel like it just just further complicates things.
But it lets us get into these things where on the page that I'm turned to right now that says V at the age of 33, then in parentheses, Stencil's calculations. And given that we know Stencil refers to Stencil in third person, is that Stencil saying Stencil's calculations?
Or Pynchon saying Stencil's calculations.
Yeah. It's interesting, but I do think that gives me enough distance from some of this Freudian psychologizing that I'm willing, I guess, to be generous with. I do not know that Thomas Pynchon or the narrator of this book, quote unquote, necessarily believes that, cross-dressing is like a sign of political turmoil and decadence that, deserves to be derided and pathologized.
Well, yeah, and we do see, him poking fun at psychoanalysis in other places in the book. This isn't the first time that's come up with our soul dentist. Including
the people at the Rusty Spoon who, just a little later on, say that it is the opinion held in the Rusty Spoon that Stencil was seeking in V, quote, his own identity. So, like, the whole sick crew at the Rusty Spoon are also like, I think this, if we could offer a little bit of a psychoanalytic take on your quest here, Stencil.
I might agree with that specific take from the Rusty Spoon goers.
It takes from the Rusty Spoon. That should be a podcast.
Again, it would be in 2025. Let's see. There's some more talk of tourists. We're back in theories of tourism here.
Oh yeah, we go back to Baedeker.
Baedeker, ring the bell.
This quote, tourism thus is supranational, like the Catholic Church, and perhaps the most absolute communion we know on earth. For its members, American, German, Italian, whatever, the Tour Eiffel, pyramids, and Campanile, all evoke identical responses from them. Their Bible is clearly written and does not admit of private interpretation. They share the same landscapes, suffer the same inconveniences, live by the same pellucid timescale. They're the street zone, blah, blah, blah. Thoughts on, what are those things called in the SAT where it's like word, colon, analogies. That's what those are called. Okay,
yeah, I think so.
Okay. I wrote this down. I want to see on my little sticky note. I said tourism, Catholic Church, black tourism, black mass. Are we seeing through like V a kind of like corruption of this like Baedeker as a whole, this sort of corruption of tourism tourism is kind of an evil on society. I don't know. That might just be true.
Hot take.
Hot take. The people in Madrid with the water guns are right. But what are you guys' thoughts on this? Because V is the like globe trotting where she goes, bad things are happening, but also she's definitely making things worse for the people who already live there. Less so Paris, but
yeah, and becomes sort of by 1943 or whatever a corrupted version of a church official, ostensibly the bad priest from the Black Mass. I think I could see this, although I don't think this book has a good version of tourism. Like, I don't think this book...
Does it have a good version of the Catholic Church?
I guess
Have we seen a lot of positive Catholicism? Maybe Father Avalanche. He seemed
Father
like a
Avalanche
guy.
doesn't seem so bad. Yeah, he is maybe the only representative. I guess, I'm
surprised, I guess, 450 pages in, how much commentary on tourism this novel has had.
Yes.
And I kind of like it. But I'm not sure totally what the end goal seems to be. Because it's definitely negging tourism a lot. but it's also coming at colonialism as a whole. And in this time period, colonialism and tourism are basically like 1-to-1. Like the people it's like English people going to Egypt because Egypt is part of the English Empire kind of thing. Like we're not seeing, well, maybe we're seeing oodles of Europeans go to places that Europe has colonized. We're not seeing Europeans go to places like owned and operated by like local governments of local people.
I have two thoughts on this. One is that I feel like one of the things that's coming up with like this tourism imagery, like connecting also to like the imagery of the capital S street, is that like this idea of like globalization and like the world kind of becomes the same when there's this like colonization. You build a German beer hall in every town.
I'm so surprised there wasn't a German beer hall in this chapter.
And we interact with all the hotels in the same way, and we interact with all the people in the same way. We just have different phrases that we say to them. And this idea that we've like I'm saying we, but like the empirical powers have sort of transformed the world into like their playground and made it so that they can go anywhere in the world and it feels kind of like home, but like a little exotic and exciting, like almost like this like fetishization of like other countries as like you collect stamps on your passport. That was one thing I was kind of getting from this, and I feel like I saw that also in the like way this book starts and ends. Like it starts with this like raucous party at the sailor's grave in Virginia, and then it ends at like sort of like a raucous party at like a sailor's bar in Malta, and they look pretty much exactly the same. And I feel like there's this like idea that no matter what is happening in the country at large, like these little sort of like microcosms or like streets are built that look like, I don't know, like the sort of like district for sailors that you could find anywhere in the world, if that makes sense.
This sort of a parallel to the history repeats itself sine wave idea, but it's the same stuff is like the same history is occurring at many places simultaneously. Like, you know what I mean? Like we're sort of doing.
Yeah.
In this book, I guess it's sort of a bad example because it's literally the same people holding the same party, just on the other side of the ocean. But like the idea that there's like raucous naval parties in Norfolk, there are raucous naval parties in Valletta. You know, song remains the same.
Yeah, I can see that. And like, I'm not trying to like jump ahead too much here, but like the sailors are like awful. Like they seem awful to have in your town. Like they're loud, they're messy. Like they piss off the like the bus driver.
They piss on the bus.
That is, yeah. Sorry, bad turn of phrase for that particular instance. And so like, yeah, you have this idea of like, well, these are like horrible visitors to this like local area. It's such a like kind of ickier picture of Malta than the like beautiful imagery that we get in Maestral's chapter.
They talk a lot about in that chapter like King Street or something, but they refer to it as the Gut, which is their like red, it's their red light district. Like at one point, Benny's in like the nice part of town. He's kind of like the boat must have left because surely if like I know some of the sailors on the scaffold are too good of guys to be in the Gut, and they're not here either, so the boat must have left. So you get these like, yeah, these sailors are showing up and like using the literal resources of the land to like repair their boat, but they're also using like the people, like they're creating a red light district and just like mowing through like literal people.
Well, and I keep thinking back to, I think you drew the comparison, Andrew, in the chapter with Fopple about this kind of, you maybe didn't phrase it exactly like this, but like the lending library of sexual satisfaction of these young women who were abducted and put in captivity to the German army troops in West South Africa. And I remember thinking that had certain similarities to the kind of like porno library that Pig operated on the boat. And it is not obviously to the same level of, human suffering and immiseration that we see all of this drunken carousing happening in Paris, in Malta, at the sailor's grave. But I do think the novel kind of takes us on a walk around all of these things in order to say, like, there are certain similarities that go between them.
Yeah, and like to call back, just to like bring it back to tourism, like in the chapter 3 where we were in Cairo, we saw this like beautiful kind of like portrait of Egypt, like told by the train conductor. And that like contrasted with like the sort of like, I don't know, 3 places that all the tourists go. And I think we see the same thing there with like Malta, where we like see this picture of like the complexities of Malta. And then there's like the 3 places that all the sailors go. And you see like these very complex countries with complex history and complex and interesting people sort of like reduced to a page in a tour guide. And their people reduced to like automata. This same paragraph describes near inanimate barmen, taxi drivers, bellhops, guides, there to do any bidding to various degrees of efficiency on receipt of the recommended, and I'm not going to pronounce these words correctly, but they all mean tip. So basically, like, you treat the people that you interact with in any country the same, sort of like interchangeable cogs in a machine.
Yeah, and you throw like a little British cash or American dollars their way, and it's like, oh, well, that's good.
So like little coin-operated wind-up dolls.
Mm-hmm.
They're the street's own, the tourists.
Well, now that we've eviscerated tourism in the early 1900s.
Yeah, before we get to the climactic performance at the opera, we get, again, this kind of involved, diagrammatic, tortuous pathways of sexual satisfaction that V and Melanie are engaged in. Quote, V needed her fetish, Melanie a mirror, temporary peace, another to watch her have pleasure. The double in the mirror, quote, becomes a voyeur. She needs, it seems, a real voyeur to complete the illusion that her reflections are, in fact, this audience. The other is also her own double. And revolving eventually around this idea of love and death and the human and the inanimate and the other inside the mirror being a kind of inanimate double of the person, kind of like the mannequin from earlier in the chapter. And
I was just going to say there's another line here. As for V, she recognized, perhaps aware of her own progression towards inanimateness, the fetish of Melanie and the fetish of herself to be one. So she like has a fetish of herself being a fetish.
Mm-hmm.
So we're running in circles here with the reflections.
And then it says a quote here, if she were Victoria Wren, even Stencil couldn't remain all unstirred by the ironic failure her life was moving toward, too rapidly by that pre-war August ever to be reversed. And we get this sort of laundry list of Egypt, Italy, France, what would eventually be Namibia, Malta, these like snapshots of, assuming this is all the same V.
Yeah, and he talks about how Victoria was being gradually replaced by V this whole time. So her animacy, or like her human name, is sort of gradually being replaced by this initial.
Poor Victoria, quote, had become intimate also with the things in the back room.
Yeah, what are the things in the back room?
I think that's what's behind the curtain of night. I mean, this I'm like a big nerd for weird fiction and Lovecraft, and this sounds straight out of something Lovecraftian in a way that I was not expecting
it felt
the narration to go to here, but I kind of dug it.
It felt very Twin Peaks to me.
Well, you think it's because of the large rooms surrounded by curtains that end, that just lead to more rooms with curtains?
With like sort of like depravity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing
implied within.
Question. So Victoria Wren is slowly being replaced by the inanimacy. We see her in, let's count them, Egypt, Florence, Paris, Namibia.
Namibia. I don't remember what the name of the town or plantation
Malta,
was.
Right?
Yep.
So
I think that's correct.
5 iterations of V. Is it V because she's basically like the Mark V, her like Fausto Maestral's 5th incarnation?
God. That is 5, ain't it?
Yeah, it is 5. We see her 5 times. That, like, as if you were prototyping, I guess in this case, a robot. This is your like fifth one.
Yeah, although she is already going by V here, presumably, but this is not chronologically, but I guess this is the 5th time we've seen her, and it is only here that she is called in the text V.
There's also Stencil potentially narrating at this point. Like, we don't really get her name so much until we get to the point where the 4th wall breaks.
Yeah.
I am intrigued by this idea of like iterative design of V, especially like in relationship to what were they called in the Yo-Yo-Dine factory?
Shock and Shroud,
yeah. And Anthro Research.
Yeah, like we have these even more advanced automata that we sort of see later on.
We get this line here that is just shock. It says, solenoid relays would be her ganglia, servo actuators move her flawless nylon limbs, hydraulic fluid be sent by her platinum heart pump through butyrate veins and arteries. And then something about
like in that
a polyethylene vagina. That's very Shroud.
Yeah, very Shroud.
Sorry, it's very Shock. Shock is the one that has the it's Shock. I'm sorry.
Interchangeable genitals. Yeah, that same section, they also mentioned, daydreaming a vision of V now at age 76, skin radiant with the bloom of some new plastic, which I felt like also called back to our Schoenmacher and like the plastic surgery as relating to this idea of sort of like cyborgness.
Yeah, I guess it's Shroud that also has the skin approximate plastics for radiation testing.
And so all of this, in presumably Stencil's reckoning, becomes a kind of slow and steady, as he kind of frames it, infiltration of the kingdom of death into the world of the living. And like V becomes an agent for the coming of this kingdom, which again sounds sort of Black Mass adjacent. Instead of the kingdom of God, we have the kingdom of death. And V becomes a somewhat Christ-like and embodied version of that kingdom. Which is, again, not... This is maybe an unfair portrait of the actual, like, real-world prosthesis and medically necessary sort of life-saving procedures or life-enabling procedures. But it does seem to be the terminology that Pynchon is working with here. But you mentioned, like, Darth Vader in an early episode, Andrew, and I think...
He's so Darth Vader coded.
It is a little Darth Vader coded, more machine than man.
There's a lot of Christ-like imagery in this chapter. Like we have, I think it mentions Melanie as looking crucified at one point, and then Melanie sort of actually ends up being crucified.
Yep.
That's all.
I just want to quote here, love is love. There's just a brief sentence that says love is love, and I think that would be a really funny Goodreads quote if anyone wants to put that at like the top most liked quote for V on Goodreads. Love is love. Thomas Pynchon V.
Some surprised readers.
What a heartwarming story this is bound to be.
Heartwarming story about love. V and love.
V in love.
Yeah, V in love did take not that I was expecting it to be a cheery narrative.
You thought it was going to be really wholesome?
Yeah, it took a dark... maybe even darker turn than I thought it would.
Where's the wholesome sick crew? Should we talk about this performance?
Before we dive into that, I think we should mention that V's sort of cyborg manifestation includes her having eigenvalues dentures.
When Stencil's stolen them and to be like, this is the final incarnation. We get VI here with the cool teeth.
Yeah.
We should also just throw out here, V shaved Melanie's head. Well, just for the visuals of the final end of the chapter, shaved head.
Yeah.
Although she's wearing a wig in the performance. Although then the director was like, oh, we should have her in the wig in the first half and then take away the wig and she'll have a shaved head in the second half because it'll emphasize her torture.
Which is also a plot point in V for Vendetta.
I thought you were going to say Stranger Things.
No. Stranger Things season V out now on Netflix. When we get that sponsorship money.
I definitely do not want to watch this book on Netflix.
No, I'm not sure.
Well,
although
they're buying everything. You will be watching this in Netflix here in a couple of years.
I mentioned to you, Duri, the other day that I think it could make a good sort of like stage musical.
Yes, I could see that.
Be the musical?
There's a lot of theatrics going on. I don't know about musical, but stage production.
Maybe not musical.
There's a lot of singing, I guess.
Yeah. V in Love would be a showstopper of a sort of Act 4 number.
Huh.
Okay. The night of the performance arrived, says Thomas Pynchon. Somehow the performance had taken on a political cast. Orientalism, at this period showing up all over Paris in fashions, music, theater, had been connected along with Russia to an international movement seeking to overthrow Western civilization. Does this sound like any sort of statements that our own federal government is making these days? Perhaps. But there is a political situation, not a capital S situation, but that is part of the energy in the audience on this night of the performance.
Why do they not like Porcepic? I forgot. It says, do you guys remember? It says early on that they don't like him for some reason, and I've forgotten why.
I forgot why also.
I mean, he's definitely like an avant-garde composer. So I think he is a certain kind of aesthete, I presume, does not appreciate his musical mode and stylings. But he's not the raging anti-Semite, that is Itaigu. But I guess he collaborates with a raging anti-Semite, so maybe that could also lend, as Pynchon writes, a political cast to the evening.
Okay, yeah, here's the sentence. Opinion in the city was violently divided. Once the composer had been loudly insulted in the street by one of the most venerable of the post-romantics. Certainly the man's personal life wasn't one to endear many prospective patrons either, because of the Black Mass. So it's because he goes to Black Mass and just because of his avant-gardeness.
This also definitely felt like a callback to our previous violence in the opera scene at the end of chapter 3.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, there's this like interesting relationship between like high art and then like these like eruptions of class violence. Or
yeah, well, we're in the box seats. Back in they start in Alexandria. They end up in Cairo.
Yeah, Cairo.
So we're in the box seats in Cairo, but here we're kind of we're backstage, but we are also down kind of in the audience.
Cairo feels very Abe Lincoln. This feels more like international football match getting too rowdy.
Yeah, so like everyone, like these different factions start yelling at each other kind of during the performance. And so there's this ballet going on, but also like a bunch of people are kind of like brawling.
It sounds fun at this point. I want to go to an opera where people get into fist fights in the audience.
Weird vibe for the ballet/opera house.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a pun here going on where the English translation of this opera is the rape of the Chinese virgins, but in French, as we get in the text, what is it? It's l'enlèvement des virgines chinoises, which enlèvement is like abduction or kidnapping, so rape in kind of the like abductive sense more so than the sexual assault sense, like the rape of the Sabine women or the rape of Europa, the rape of Persephone, etc., etc. Although, you know, there are clear parallels between the two uses of that term, but it also means enlèvement, like Wiktionary has it as takeoff or lift off, like a lifting up into the air. You are enleavening the Chinese virgins, which happens at the end of this ballet performance.
So we will see. Before we get there, I do think it's kind of funny that these two political factions that have broken out are like pro-Porcepique and anti-Porcepique. I'm probably not saying that correctly. But the Porcepiquites are the people who are pro-Porcepique, which literally just means the porcupines.
Yeah.
So there's this group going around calling themselves the porcupines.
Porcepiquiste.
I googled Porcepiquistes, and the first item that comes up is a YouTube video called Prickly Adventures, The Amazing Life of Porcupines.
That's nice.
Which I might be watching after this podcast.
Feels like it would be a good word for a French tongue twister. Porcepique.
It's a tongue twister for me, at least.
Not speaking French.
The Porcepique pals?
Porcepique pals.
Porcepique pals. Patrick, you didn't tell me that I needed to like study like 3 different languages in order to be able to talk about this book.
Yeah, just wait until we get to the
Finnegan's Wake.
Joyce Jam coming up soon. Okay, shall we talk about the ending of this?
Yeah, let's get it over with.
We're dancing around
as little as
it.
possible.
Yes. So the choreographer, quote, got the idea from reading an account of an Indian massacre in America, which, if we are sort of drawing connections between colonial violences, here is one in sort of bright neon lights Thomas Pynchon gives us. Also
calls back to like the fact that Pynchon wrote a whole chapter of this book sort of inspired by an account that he read of a genocide in West South Africa. It feels also a little like same type of thing as we saw with Gerfo of like...
There is a little bit of like a mea culpa, an apologia, perhaps, in this chapter and in Fausto Maestral's confessions, maybe on the part of... Like, especially kind of coming from a young author, like a 23-year-old writing about how, yes, the burden of the writer is that, like, writing about things has no sort of moral backing on any of the things that are written about. You know,
yeah, like Pynchon feels sort of self-aware that, like, he's like, well, this is my source material, but, like, is my source material flawed? Should I really be writing about this? I'm writing about it, but look at these other people who are doing similar things, and, like, we don't feel so great about them.
It could be worse. I could be making a ballet about it.
Yeah, it feels like he's grappling with this idea of, his own writing style.
Yes, I think so. In broad strokes, Melanie is impaled due to not wearing an appropriate kind of chastity belt, effectively, that is part of the special effects at the end of this ballet, where she is raised up into the air on the length of a pole.
Yeah, and so it's unclear if it was an accident or suicide. I kind of read it as a suicide, that she sort of made a deliberate choice not to wear this object, and then go through with the performance anyways, sort of knowing that she would be impaled. So the audience, like, actually witnesses her become impaled.
And this is your classic, like, clown screaming help, but everybody thinks it's part of the bit. Like, people are astounded by the gesticulations of her agony.
Patrick, what was the TV show or movie that we watched? Oh, Interview with a Vampire.
Okay, what?
Wasn't there like a whole scene in that where there was a theater?
Oh, yeah, there's the vampire theater in Interview with a Vampire, which is inspired by the Grand Guignol, which was an actual theater in sort of turn-of-the-century Paris that did these kind of horrific, like, it was the horror movies of live theater, and they had all these kind of special effects and blood and electricity and fireworks. Yeah, it was sort of like shock value horror live on stage.
And then in the vampire version of it, they like invited like real people to watch it, but then they actually killed people on stage.
Yeah, because they're vampires.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did also get some like Grand Guignol vibes from this, which looks like the Grand Guignol opened in 1897. So we're roughly in the right time. Its peak was between World War I and World War II. So this feels a little bit moving in that direction.
Yeah, and I think, like, again, like, simulated violence turns into, like, there's this interesting V, maybe, of there was real violence that inspired this performance, which is simulated violence, which then ended and was kind of, like, troubled by throughout the rehearsal process, but culminated in another act of real violence.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a savvy reading. We again get, I called it like Melanie is accidentally killed here because there's a bit of meditation on the role of accident once again and sort of things happening in a mechanical universe and whether or not she intended or didn't intend to suffer this fate. Like, there's a relationship to inanimacy once again that, you know, she would have been saved by the specially designed inanimate a fixture. And the coroner's verdict, charitably, was death by accident, Pynchon writes.
Charitably, but I feel like it also kind of takes away her agency.
Mm-hmm. But this is like, V is like distraught. This is like, V is emotional in a way we have not seen any iteration of V act before. Some versions of the woman, her lover, nothing further was seen. Some versions tell of her gone hysterical backstage, having to be detached forcibly from Melanie's corpse, of her screaming vendetta at Satan and Itagu for plotting to kill the girl. But she runs off into the distance. Interesting. I wonder if we see anyone else run off into the distance
Later
on in these set of chapters.
I wonder if she's, like, distraught as though she's, like, lost someone she loves, or if she's distraught as though, like, a precious object has been taken from her.
Yeah. Or if she was never distraught at all. I guess this is some versions tell. But that is the end of this chapter. We will take a break before running straight through chapters 15 and 16 right after this. Oh my god, Dahoud is singing a song up in the main cell on the Susanna Squaducci. The bit continues.
This is so stressful to me. I cannot think. My mind just goes completely blank.
That's why I didn't tell you about it, because I knew it would stress you out as we got into the podcast.
I'm going to go watch Prickly Adventures, The Amazing Life of Porcupines during my break.
Oh, my head. What happened? It's New Year's Day, and I'm still in the Susanna Squaducci. Ow, a mousetrap. Ow, another mousetrap. What is happening? Andrew, Duri?
I don't know.
Where are you?
I think someone's throwing mousetraps around. My head hurts so bad, and I got bludgeoned in the stomach by the shore patrol.
Duri, this is your last chance to play in this wonderful space that we've created.
My head hurts because I sat up too fast and hit the top of my low bunk.
That's good. You found a bunk.
Mm.
That's great. Well, I guess now that we're all here,
I'm so bad at improvising. Thank you for the yes and, Patrick, but the next time you want to do one of these bits, I need a heads up so I can prepare my part.
You wouldn't have had time to read the book. That's the problem if you were preparing for the bit that I wanted to do. Next time. Well, we're all learning here. Should we talk about chapter 15? Saha?
The Aloha
Saha.
of Maltese, from what I've gathered.
This is a short summary.
Short chapter.
That's true. In this brief interlude, Mr. Profane and Mr. Bodine go to Washington. At the National Gallery, they meet two girls named Flip and Flop, carouse for several days, chase each other through the streets on stolen bikes, and end up in the drunk tank. Pig is recognized as AWOL. Benny and Rachel share one last quiet, pitiful night together before it's off to Valletta.
Andrew, as a resident of Washington, D.C., have you ever gone on this type of rollicking adventure before?
Way to dox me on the pod, Duri. No,
I'm sure there are many other Andrews in Washington, D.C.
I mean, I don't think I've never just like done donuts in DuPont Circle because DuPont Circle is too busy these days at 2 a.m. to do donuts, but it does sound like a good, there's some other circles that I think I could get away with doing donuts, and it seems like a fun time. And I totally, who hasn't woken up on the steps of the Masonic Temple?
Wrapped in a Hudson Bay blanket.
Yeah, so where are we? We identify Benny and Stencil as the rollicking boys. They come to Rachel's apartment, where we get another biblical reference. Rachel has scrawled, "I'm headed for the Whitney, Kish mein Tokus profane," which, even if you don't know Yiddish, you can probably put together what that means. And Stencil says, "Mene mene tekel uparsen," which is a biblical reference. Did y'all look this up?
Did not.
No.
All right, I'm like wrapping my hands around my T in order to type this because I wanted to pull it up. So this is from the book of Daniel. In the corrupt king Belshazzar has like this big feast and then finds this writing on the wall. This is what the phrase "the writing on the wall" refers to.
So because Rachel's note is on the wall.
Yes, because Rachel's note is on the wall.
A great pod right now.
This is such a good pod. I definitely could not have done this before hopping in. I forgot I needed to pull up this reference.
Sorry for leaving you in the
me and Duri just didn't look it up. And reading
we
back,
just didn't look it
it's
up
a
at
sentence
all. Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense, and we just didn't even investigate.
I circled it, and then
I moved straight
didn't have
on.
time.
Ahem. So, this is the writing that was written. This is Daniel Book 5. Mene, mene, tekel, uparsen. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighted in the balances and art found wanting. Peres, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. And so the interpretation of this that Daniel gives the king is that the days of his kingdom are numbered, as has been scrawled on the wall of this feast.
So the days of Profane and Rachel are numbered.
Yes, that's the reference. Thank you for your patience. We have now caught up with the reference. Ho hum, says Profane in response.
Do we need to look that one up?
No, I think I got that one.
So eigenvalues robbery. If we recall, Profane and Stencil robbed eigenvalues, stole the dentures. That's made the front page of the Times, which is wild to me.
He's a very well-respected dentist.
The fact that the police seem to have had a press conference about it that Paula references, I was like, I didn't know eigenvalue is such big business, and yet all of these unemployed layabouts are constantly the ones taking up his time.
Can you imagine the robbery of a dental office making the front page of the New York Times today?
He's a psycho dentist.
These teeth are partially made of platinum. That's probably pretty valuable.
I feel like this is the type of information that I find after I've been scrolling on the New York Times for 45 minutes, sort of towards the bottom of my app, above wire cutter, above the sports section, but below where the actual news has ended, you see weird articles such as psycho dentist robbed last night.
Yeah, it very amusingly, Benny is wigged out by this, and Pynchon writes, it had only now occurred to him that he'd broken the law.
If you broke into your bud's house,
I was thinking the same thing.
Did you if your bud doesn't know and they call the police, yes, you're breaking the law. But we see later that Stencil and Eigenvalue just have a chat, and then they're cool about it. So like, if you're breaking into your friend's house, it's not that bad.
Yeah, I just feel like you got to let your friend know so they don't like involve the greater public.
Yeah, they made a mistake, but who hasn't?
There was actually, speaking of weird articles in the New York Times, I feel like there was an article a while ago.
This is good. We'll get to the plot of the book eventually.
About.
Keep going.
I think it was like a state senator in Michigan. I could be wrong about the state. That like got maybe Minnesota, because it was a very close Congress, who got like deposed from her seat because she like broke into her perhaps some relative's house.
That's right. I remember this. Yes, you told me about
and then
this.
got like arrested for breaking into her relative's house.
And then was like,
Okay.
it wasn't breaking and entering because it was like my stepmom's.
yeah,
or
but then the
something.
stepmom. Anyways, this reminds me of that.
Yep. I knew it reminded me of something. It was that exact story. Yep.
Speaking, also found in probably the same area of the New York Times that I feel like this would show up in today.
Yep. Rooney Winsome arrives with in tow of Officer Ten Eyck.
Yeah, he knocks on the door and says, "Police," which is not, I don't think, how the cops would normally knock on the door if they're just like dropping someone off. But it does cause Stencil to jump out the window.
We're so back in like the slapstick. We're just like hanging out with our good Looney Tunes friends, Benny and Stencil.
Do you think Stencil also thought he was about to fall 4 floors and then landed on the fire escape?
It's a good fire escape.
Yes, they drop off Rooney. Rooney has been like flashing people from the top of the stoop of St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Yep. And then Rachel shows up not long after Paula has once again been propositioning Benny.
And I was a little confused about this interaction between Rachel and Profane, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah, what is the interaction?
So Rachel walks in. Profane is like hugging Paula because Paula has sort of like thrown herself at him and is like crying into his chest.
Mm-hmm.
And Rachel's like, yeah. And Rachel's like, oh, so this is what happens behind my back. Well, I was at church praying for you, Profane, and the children. And then it says he had the common sense to go along with her. Believe me, it was all perfectly innocent. Rachel shrugged, meaning the 2-line act was over. So they did a little bit, too.
They did a little bit.
They did a little bit.
It's cute.
This is also preceded by the line, "Poor Ben. They all called him poor, but to save his feelings never explained. Let it stand as an endearment." Brutal. I wrote burn.
Poor Ben.
And then I got kind of lost in the interaction. Rachel said, you didn't go to St. Patrick's, did you? You should have.
I think Benny says, you didn't go to St. Patrick's, did you? You should have.
Oh, because Rooney was there.
Yes.
Okay.
Which the double thing going on here is that she wouldn't be at church praying because she's Jewish.
I got you.
But she's like affecting this kind of persona.
And then it says, and we know who it was Rachel spent the rest of the day with in the night. So I guess that's like Rachel and Benny have one last day and night together.
This is
no.
I
Rooney.
also thought that
Rooney?
this is her taking care of Rooney.
Why?
That's what I wrote. I was like, Rachel needs to. You need to let Rooney just go. Like, you can't.
Yeah.
She keeps trying to like baby him and to help him. Just let him. You can't. He's like sleeping in her bed. This is ridiculous.
She can't leave a poor defenseless soul well enough alone. She has to be there being the caretaker. So this is holding his head, tucking him in, touching the beard stubble and dirt on his face, watching him sleep, and the frown lines there relax slowly. So the like unshaven, drunken, sleeping Rooney is who she spends the next 24 hours with, attending to.
Not to keep diverting us from the plot of the book, but I was just recently rewatching some of the early episodes of the hit HBO series Girls. And I saw some like serious parallels between the characters in Girls and the whole Sick crew including, I think, Rachel has big Marnie vibes in terms of like needing to mother and care for everyone in a sort of, I don't know what the word is, but regimented way.
Self-sacrificing,
yes.
self-valorizing way.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. That's what I was seeking.
Yeah, we also considered that Hannah in Girls has big Esther energy.
Yes.
It was really testing me on my viewing of Girls like 10 years ago. I'll take your guys' word for that one. I don't really remember the show that well.
Listeners, if you have any parallels, please let us know. But I think in the cyclical sine waves of history, I think the whole sick crew is still running large, back in 2012 and probably still today in a new form.
Still running large in Obama-era Brooklyn. Yes, so Rachel is taking care of Rooney at this point because she must always attend to the poor.
Wow, that's so disappointing. I thought Rachel and Benny had a nice night together.
They sort of do end up having a night
together. Just it's at the very end of the chapter.
Just after Rooney. God, do you hear that a man is flashing children on the stoop of a church and be like, "Oh, I better."
This is a woman who is in love with Benny Profane.
Yeah.
She just loves the downtrodden. Whoever is the most, the saddest sack in the room, it seems like she's sort of attracted to.
Yeah, unfortunately, Rooney has won the saddest sack award for the day.
Mm-hmm. This would be the greatest season of The Bachelorette. Just the 18 biggest losers we know.
Which of these pathetic losers? Oh, bless her. I love Rachel.
Profane goes off to the spoon. He announces that he's going to Malta. Even though I feel like he said he wasn't going to Malta.
He said he's going to Malta so many times. We have gotten so many chapters of I'm going to Malta, I'm not going to Malta, I'm going to Malta, I'm not going to Malta.
Which is funny because we flash forward way back when to him on the boat.
Yeah, this book,
and then the whole rest of this,
up until the point, this book was just a linear timeline through the year, and then all of a sudden, all of these chapters are happening effectively at the exact same time.
Yeah,
and are just layered on top of each other.
Well, it makes it especially hard to kind of track where are Benny and Rachel in terms of their affection for each other at any given time, and this is presumably intentional on Pynchon's part. Are they on the outs? Are they sharing a tender moment? Did they know it's over? And it's kind of all of these things are true at the same time, layered on top of each other.
When you first get it, it just seems so clear that Rachel doesn't come to the sailing of the ship because she's pissed. And after this chapter, it's kind of well, it's just sort of a sad ending, and she's not going to go, but she's not necessarily actively angry about it.
Yeah.
But the whole sit crew throws Profane a goodbye party.
They do. And then he's off to Washington, D.C.
To do what? Maybe get an expedited passport? It's sort of unclear. They don't do anything paperwork related.
The implication is that Stencil is kind of handling all of the okay, logistics. Well, I know a guy in the State Department who can make this work for you, and Benny is just kind of there. I guess he needs some vaccinations and fingerprints, but he's probably got most of those from the Navy anyways.
Yeah, we don't really get that whole narrative. What we get instead is Pig Bodine and Is Pig Bodine also going to Malta?
No, he just
comes to DC.
He's just having fun.
Okay.
He just goes to DC because why not?
So yeah, what we get instead is Pig and Profane meeting two ladies, Flip and Flop, calling back to Hanky and Panky, and also the Flip and Flop of McClintock Spheres music. And we instead get their adventures sort of rollicking around DC.
And adventures they have. They go to several parties. They meet a bunch of interesting people. We get a laundry list of Pynchon having fun coming up with names for people like Maynard Basilisk, who is
so good.
Headed to Vassar to teach beekeeping.
And is also an escapee from Devil's Island.
We looked up Devil's Island. It's a French prison colony off the coast of Guyana. And
Okay.
Richard Dreyfuss of the previous chapter, and also, I mean, of real life, but mentioned in the previous chapter, was a prisoner there for a while.
Oh.
Interesting.
There's a Manx monoglot, so the language spoken on the Isle of Man, who just shows up at parties and has no one to speak to because, she only speaks Manx.
There's an inventor that is celebrating his 72nd rejection by the U.S. Patent Office for a coin-operated whorehouse, which he was explaining the blueprints of to a small group of tyrosemophiles, which I thought was funny. Pynchon is constantly throwing unusual terms and words at us and never explains what they mean, but he decided to explain what this one particular word means, which is a collector of labels on French cheese boxes.
Is this real? I assumed it was fake until you said it out loud, and then I was like, I wonder if this is real.
I actually don't know if it's real, but I did think it was funny that he has explained not a single word to us in 466 pages of unusual words, but we did take the time to define tyrosemiophile.
I'm thrilled to report to you that tyrosemophilia is real, and that the largest collection as of 2019 encompasses 250,000 label designs.
Of French cheese boxes.
Of French cheese labels, yeah.
Crazy.
Where's that at? Where can we see
I found
that?
a new hobby. Private collection.
There should be a French cheese box label museum.
There's probably a This French Life podcast about it.
Anyways, that was the word that I think Thomas Pynchon thought went one step too far in terms of recognizability.
Obscurity.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Profane goes to
Flop.
sleep in the bathtub at this party because he's profane at a party, and he just,
Classic.
if he's not
Gotta go to
voyeuring,
sleep.
he's going to sleep. He's got 2 party modes.
He's got 2 party modes, flip and flop.
So true.
Flop mentions that Pig Bodine has the same initials as Pat Boone, and it made me realize that Pig Bodine and Benny Profane have flip-flopped initials, BP and PB. I don't know if that's anything, but I thought of it. They're kind of like two halves of the same soul.
Do we know what type of music Pat Boone plays?
Yeah, I do. I looked this up somewhere. According to Wikipedia, many of Boone's most successful recordings were covers of songs that were first released by black artists. In addition to Ain't That a Shame, he recorded Tutti Frutti, Long Tall Sally, At My Front Door. Critics have cited him as an example of cultural whitewashing, which is maybe relevant here.
Sounds about right for this crew.
He was close friends of Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter. Okay, so he also has
I was like,
this
is like the timeline on that's a little weird, but okay, sure.
Sorry, I just got distracted by a 1961 quote with a gathering at Pepperdine University, Pepperdine College. He said, quote, I would rather, tell me if this sounds Pynchon-esque, I would rather see my 4 girls shot and die as little girls who have faith in God than leave them to die some years later as godless, faithless, soulless communists.
Oh my God.
So,
That he was giving like a commencement speech and he said that?
I guess so.
Oh, that sounds like
all right.
I gotta read that speech. That's crazy.
All right. So anyways, Flip and Flop have a record collection of exclusively Pat Boone recordings. I don't know what Pat Boone's politics were in 1956, but
I bet they were awesome.
Yeah, they get arrested at one point after a little bicycle chase and then end up in prison.
Supposedly Pig is going to go to Florida to get married to one of them. He doesn't. Shame. Yeah. He wouldn't have gone to jail.
Yeah, and he gets found by the Shore Patrol while he's in jail. So Pig Bodine's sort of time is up
NCIS busts him in the Washington, D.C. drunk tank.
And his like shoes were stolen by someone else in the drunk tank, and he's just like, oh well.
This is sort of another example of it's not theft if it's from your friends, because they're like stole the bike from each other. Particularly, they stole the bikes from Flip and Flop, but they're just playing around. But they still yell thief in the road and then get arrested.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Benny steals a bike, and then Pig and Flop hop on another bike and chase him down.
Well, but he stole the bike from Flip and Flop.
Yes.
Yeah, and then like Pig is like, I'm not gonna press charges, and the cop's like, well, I will.
And then arrests both of them, which is funny. And that's we're out of sight of Pig Bodine.
That was our time in Washington, D.C.
It was our time in Washington. And then we have this scene of Benny and Rachel, which is
private going away party.
It's something. It's a hell of a going away party. Let's see. Stencil has a conversation with Eigenvalue where they just talk past each other about like, yeah, obviously the rightful owner should have something that's stolen, right? And Eigenvalue's like, yeah, the rightful owner should have something if it's stolen from them. And Stencil is like, right, exactly.
Because Eigenvalue thinks the rightful owner is himself, and Stencil thinks the rightful owner is V, who I guess he's going to be returning these dentures to. Is his game plan, question mark?
Or offering them
in
some way.
Early on, I think when they initially steal it, his idea is to like bring it as a gesture of goodwill of some kind.
But then I will just read this. Later, Profane lay with his head in her lap, that's Rachel's, her long hair falling over to cover him and keep him warm. It being September, the landlord was still reluctant about heat. They were both naked. Profane rested his ear near her labia majora, as if it were a mouth there which could speak to him. Rachel was absently listening to the champagne bottle. And they have like a little... She's like listening to the champagne bottle like a seashell and asks him to listen to it too. And he says that it's a happy sound, but privately to himself thinks that he heard carbon dioxide coming out of solution, magnified in a false-bottomed echo chamber.
Which reminded him of the Anthro Research Lab. I thought she said it was a happy sound. Maybe he did.
He says yes.
Okay.
Yes, he says yes.
They agree, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's the end of Benny and Rachel.
Saha.
It's a very, what is it? I'm remembering absolutely none of the references I'm trying to today, but the sculpture at the Vatican, the Pietà, with Mary holding the body of Jesus. You know the one?
Yeah, and we've had Virgin Mary visuals previously with Fina.
Once again, we've got sort of Benny Profane as the mishmash of Jewish and Catholic iconography. Where do we stand on the end of Benny and Rachel?
Probably
are we satisfied? I know, Andrew. I know you were like really.
I just want.
You were hopeful for it.
I would just like Benny to be happy.
I also want Rachel to be happy.
I do think Rachel's probably too good for Benny, but it's still a bummer to see it end. You know, it's like, is it the right thing to happen? Yeah, but like, it still pulls on those heartstrings a little bit.
I'm more sad that I don't think we're going to be seeing Esther again.
Yeah, the chances of Esther showing back up seem pretty minimal at this point.
Pretty slim. I was like really ready for Esther to have a comeuppance and like sort of find her strength. And we don't know what happens to her after she goes to Havana. And I'm sad for that.
I mean, we will wrap back around to this when we get to the end of the next chapter, but Benny at some point says offhand, I'd say I haven't learned a goddamn thing. And J. Cary Grant notes that you could basically say that, like, that statement applies to every major character in this book, effectively.
Yeah, there's not a lot of character growth going on here.
Or there's growth, but then it decays again. It's very yo-yo-esque in its development and sort of regression.
Yeah, well, they have realizations, but then they hide. They the realizations are too much for them, and so they retreat back into their old habits.
Yeah.
Then he tried to make some steps forward at one point. Arguably, that's when things fell apart. He should have stayed a sad sack. And then he could have stayed with Rachel.
His entire progression was ruined by an alarm clock.
That's the Schlemiel life.
I just feel like
but that's exactly it. It just reconfirms Benny's probably out there thinking to himself, damn, if it weren't for that alarm clock.
Oh, good God.
I could have been happy.
If you're letting yourself be derailed by an alarm clock and being like, this is fate, this is the kind of guy I am, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, the alarm clock was just an excuse. It would have been something else.
The easiest thing to have overcome. His girlfriend worked at an employment agency.
Yep.
All right, shall we venture at long last to Malta? Contemporary Malta?
Let's go to Malta. Saha.
Saha, which
now means goodbye. Hello. It means goodbye. It means goodbye. It means goodbye at the end, and now it means hello.
We've got the Navy's whole sick crew is here.
Absolutely crazy to me that we're still getting new characters in the last chapter of this book.
What did you think was going to happen?
They're not all entirely new.
Insane to me.
But we know Pappy Hod.
We don't know Fat Clyde.
No, we don't know Fat Clyde from Shy.
Insane.
He's from Winnetka, actually.
Yes, actually from Winnetka. Shout out to Winnetka.
It's insane to me.
Doesn't Winnetka come up in Shadow Ticket? Sorry, Andrew.
No,
it does.
I want to know.
It does, in fact, when I was leafing through my copy, shows up in there.
More on Winnetka later.
More on Winnetka sometime in the future. Which C? What were you saying, Andrew?
It's insane to me that this first section of this chapter is 30 pages long. This is ridiculous. Long. And
I was leafing through it and I was like, we just had a solid 7 to 10 pages of fun Navy boys debauchery. And then Thomas Pynchon's and that wasn't enough, was it?
Again.
You look at the table of contents and you're like, yeah, chapter 16 Valletta. This is when the real stuff's going to happen. It's 40-page chapter. It's going to get real. Stencil's in it for 6 pages.
Thank you.
This is 30 pages of absolute filler, which has a nice ending, but it could have been 4 pages.
I was this is the climax, and we're watching Fat Clyde bumble around with Pappy Hod. I don't care about what they're getting up to.
I also just realized Fat Clyde is 6'1" and 142 pounds.
Yeah, so he's not fat.
Absolutely tiny. No, that's such a funny joke. 6 foot 1 inch / 142 pounds
he's
from
extremely
Winnetka.
Skinny.
Yep. That's Fat Clyde from Winnetka.
Nothing's funnier than a thin guy called Fat or Big and a big guy called Little. It's the funniest
Well, this is
joke.
also that he's quote unquote from Shy, but actually from Winnetka. So he and Pappy Hod hit the town because they're on liberty.
These are another 2 people that are getting drunk together, but Fat Clyde does not want to be going out with Pappy Hod.
Fat Clyde is desperate for Pappy Hod to just want to have a quiet night. The scaffold is in dry dock in Malta.
For the listener who hasn't read this, because it has sustained propeller damage. They're not sure exactly what they hit, but the official report is aggressive animals or something. And then the sailors go around making jokes about a propeller eating fish. Also, the Suez crisis is happening. So the boat is in a British port and they've draped a giant American flag over the ship and put spotlights on it so that if Egypt sends bombers, they know not to strike it, which is so funny.
It's super funny. I realize I didn't read my summary for this chapter, but we can just keep going.
No. Read it.
Read it.
Read it.
Okay.
You spent so much time working on it. I was watching you type before we started
Sorry,
recording.
I just dove in so quickly to Fat Clyde. That was my bad.
We just dove in so quick. I mean, there's a lot of meat on the bones of these first 40 pages. More debauchery, this time in the streets of Valletta, where the scaffold is dry docked for a broken propeller amidst the Suez crisis, as Andrew just reported. Sailor Fat Clyde hits the town with Pappy Hod, where they encounter British soldiers on their last night before deployment to Egypt. Clyde meets up with Lieutenant J.G. Johnny Contango, who still pals around with his enlisted buddies, and the two try to keep eyes on Pappy, who stumbles back to the scaffold just in time to find Benny and Paula. Meanwhile, Stencil grills Fausto about his V theories, tracking down several leads to no avail, and eventually making for Stockholm. Paula resolves to return to the States and await Pappy Hod, and feverish, drunk, and wandering, Benny meets Brenda Wigglesworth, a recent graduate of Beaver College, who takes a liking to him, not unlike a waspy echo of young Rachel. The two of them run through the darkened city towards the sea. So anyways, we're on the town with Pappy and Clyde.
Pappy's so sad, guys. He's been talking nonstop about how Paula left him, and Fat Clyde is doing everything he can to steer him away from the Metropole bar, which is where Paula used to work and where they met the last time they were in Malta.
He knows that he's not going to steer away Pappy Hod from the Metro. He knows where Pappy Hod is headed.
What do they meet up with Johnny Contango at one point, and they go to a different bar that isn't the Metropole, but they they see a woman who knows who Pappy is and knows Paula. And then he dances 25 dances in a row, which is a new record that he previously held at 22. That's I liked that one a lot.
Yeah. They're sad that Jane Mansfield is getting married.
Who wasn't?
Just go watch Mariska Hargitay's documentary on the subject if you want more on Jane Mansfield.
R.I.P. Jane Mansfield.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Andrew, could you give us a quick lowdown on the Suez crisis?
Yeah. Yep.
I put you on the spot, but you're always looking up the historical events.
I've got the Wikipedia page up. I think we talked about this briefly in the last episode, because I think it is mentioned there. But the Suez crisis is the British, French, Israeli invasion of Egypt.
Egypt has a newly elected president, Nasser.
Yeah. Because they're trying to reopen the Suez Canal, which was nationalized under Nasser. But
the United States does not get involved with a land. I mean, it doesn't get involved with the fight sort of period.
Yeah, is this the one time the US and the Soviet Union both agreed on something in the Security Council? Because it says that in this book, in the book and also on the Wikipedia page, it says that they both voted against intervention. So
all of the Marines that the scaffold boys encounter are joking about how in a couple of days they'll be fighting each other with the US and the Soviet Union on one side and France and England on the other.
Yeah, all of these commandos it says in a few pages that not Congress, the British Congress, whatever they're called, Downing Street, Parliament, thank you, has authorized a land invasion, and all of the commandos are on 1 hour notice to be ready to paratroop into Egypt if necessary.
There are some lengthy annotations in the companion to V about the details here that Pynchon does not exactly get right about sort of the different UN resolutions and the British Parliament resolutions. So some of this is kind of take some authorial license and I think simplification of the timeline here, and also of how vocal some of these national interests were in exactly what they were planning on doing. It seems like the real history is maybe somewhat more muddled than the British landing in or the British going to Valletta and being like, oh, we might be fighting the Americans tomorrow. Although, who could say? Also, a contango is the percentage which the buyer of stock pays to the seller to postpone transfer to the next or any settling, according to the OED, as J. Cary Grant notes. But also, it relates to a tango, which we read about in the last, not the last chapter, but the ballet chapter.
Where was the tango?
The Johnny Contango, his last name.
No, but where was the tango we read about previously?
I think at one point in one of the cabaret scenes, they're like, they're doing a tango, and the one of the characters is thinking about the sort of like automaton-like movements of the tango. It's like very precise and chopped.
More debauchery.
More names.
Does Ploy show up, or is there just another biter?
Dahoud and Ploy both show up briefly, but there is also another biter who is not Ploy.
Who's called Pinges?
Yeah.
He tries to bite the bartender's hand.
Yep. And then we see who's that watching over on one of the walls.
We get a diagram in the book. Or like a illustration.
An illustration. This turns into a picture book briefly.
Yeah, we get an illustration of Kilroy, like sort of graffiti drawn on the walls of Malta, sort of peering over the wall with his little hands and nose.
Which Pynchon has some theories about. Maybe I should just read here, because I think this little section maybe is you can tell the importance because of the fact that there are drawings here, which is interesting. We should key into it.
It would be very hard to follow without the diagrams.
Kilroy was possibly the only objective onlooker in Valletta that night. Common legend had it that he'd been born in the U.S. right before the war on a fence or latrine wall. Later, he showed up everywhere the American armies moved, farmhouses in France, pillboxes in North Africa, bulkheads of troop ships in the Pacific. Somehow he'd acquired the reputation of a schlemiel or sad sack. The foolish nose hanging over the wall was vulnerable to all manner of indignities, fist, shrapnel, machete, hinting perhaps at a precarious virility, a flirting with castration, though ideas like this are inevitable in a latrine-oriented as well as Freudian psychology. But it was all deception. Kilroy, by 1940, was already bald, middle-aged, his true origins forgotten. He was able to ingratiate himself with a human world, keeping schlemiel silence about what he'd been as a curly-haired youth. It was a masterful disguise, a metaphor, for Kilroy had sprung into life in truth as part of a bandpass filter, thus inanimate, but Grand Master of Valletta tonight. Here's your, incursion of the inanimate into the living world. It's Kilroy all along.
Is that Styx song a song about... Are they Pynchon fans?
Which one?
Domo Arigato... Wait, is that the right... yeah, Mr. Roboto. That's a song by Styx, yes?
Yes.
And at the end, he's like, I'm Kilroy.
Oh, maybe.
End. Styx, if you're listening, come on the show.
We should mention there's also a diagram of a bandpass filter, which if
you Google it, does not usually look like Kilroy, but all of the parts are there if you were to draw them like Kilroy.
If you got the two resistors, which are his fingers, and you've got what sort of what his curly hair that Pynchon writes about is the inductor, and the nose is the capacitor. Inductor is a
positive and negative are his eyeballs.
Yeah, inductor. That's the right
Obviously,
word.
this section was important to Pynchon because there are two visuals that we don't have visuals anywhere else in the book. But I feel like I'm not sure it was hitting 100% for me.
I saw that. I mean, obviously, I noticed these sketches before I got to this page, just kind of
flipping
through.
Same.
And I was like, oh, this is this little circuit diagram. What is this going to... Okay, let me brush up on my junior year electronics class info. This could be big. And then I just sailed right through, and it doesn't come back around, and I don't get it.
This idea does feel... I like this, I think. I don't know. I think I would have liked it more like earlier in the book, because it feels a little, and this is not something I think I would say about most of the rest of this book, but it feels a little precious.
Well, it feels a little, I feel like there's a few things happening in these later chapters that I feel like Pynchon's kind of like hitting us over the head with some of these themes that we've been picking up on, that have been like showing up. I feel like the book really like started to like come together for me with the like Mistral chapter, which I thought was a great chapter. And now that we're in this like latter segment of the book, I'm kind of like, okay, yeah, we've heard about Kilroy. Like, we know Profane's Kilroy. We know about the voyeurs. And yeah, okay, now we have a picture of Kilroy.
Yeah.
And like, we've talked about animacy and inanimacy, and we've talked about some other electrical switches and the flip and the flop and Bongo Shaftesbury. And now we have a picture of an electrical switch.
I do feel like I start to feel, obviously, I think this is a very good book, but I do start to feel the 23-year-old writer here towards the end of the book, where there's just a little bit of hedging on the confidence of like, I just want to like really drive home some of these things.
Are you going to get this?
Yeah, he knows that he's coming into the last 50 pages and he's like, just one more time. Here's all the major themes and symbols. We're just running it back. This is the clip show at the end.
Yeah.
So I like this little Kilroy diagram. Like I find it interesting and fun, but it's like half a notch too much for me.
It's like a little too earnest.
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like it is not as interesting an image to focus on, I think, as the hyenas in the fog were in the Fopple chapter.
Maybe Pynchon's not that good of a drawer. It's much more complicated.
Patrick, you've read one other Pynchon book. Do drawings show up elsewhere?
Drawings show up, yes.
Do you feel like they're used more effectively later on?
Having only sang The Crying of Lot 49, yes, I think they're better used in The Crying of Lot 49.
Well, I look forward to that.
Yeah. I think there's there's more interesting stuff going on. But this we should return to this Kilroy thing when we read that book.
Okay. He's trying something out here. I respect that.
Yeah. This is where we get some of the, like, have you ever noticed that Brits get drunk like this, but Americans get drunk like this? It's a lot of that here. Dahoud and Ploy show back up, and Dahoud, like, people start calling out to him and calling him the name of, like, a black jazz singer, Billy Eckstein, and he sings a song.
And then like leads there was like a whole big brawl going on, and then like the song that he's singing, like he gets a bunch of sort of like drunk sailors into like what seemed to me sort of like a marching regimen, but then it devolves back into like sort of a brawl.
Yeah, it's just sort of like a lengthy, rambling kind of like, here's people drunk and fighting over here. Here's people drunk and fighting over here.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Fat Clyde and Johnny are trying to like carry Pappy Hod through the crowd, because Pappy Hod has gotten so drunk that he can't really hold himself up anymore, and they're trying to get him to a taxi, but their way is blocked by this sort of like mayhem, and so they're trying to like kind of get their way through this sort of crazed crowd of sailors.
Yeah, there's a weird little parenthetical here where one of the English commandos gives Johnny a bottle of whiskey, and there's a parenthetical that says, to this day, the bottle has remained in Johnny Contango's possession unopened. No one knows what he's keeping it for. Which again is this little, we're not in a stencil chapter here, but the narrator is now at some remove in the future of whatever to this day is, but it's not in 1956.
They eventually get back to the scaffold. They're a little bit tardy. It's a little bit late. And Johnny and Fat Clyde sort of go ahead because Pappy sees two figures sort of appear from the shadows. And those figures are Paula and Profane, who have come to see him. This is the first time that we've seen our main characters on Valletta, 30 pages in. And Paula's wants to get back together with Pappy.
Why?
So what is the action she takes here? J. Cary Grant has some theories about what is happening here. But what is the action that she does?
She gives Pappy Hod an ivory comb with 5 crucified British on it, also called 5 Kilroys, on the comb. So this is Victoria Wren's old comb.
This is Victoria Wren's old comb.
I've had it a long time.
Also, it's hilarious that she says he's been very upset, and she hits him with the argument of, in a way, it's only been a week that we were not together because you were at sea the rest of the time, and that doesn't count.
Yeah, so J. Cary Grant talks about Paula casting herself as like Penelope in an Odyssey-esque role, this I will sit home in Norfolk, faithful and spin, and then suggests, quoting Hawthorne, that the passing of the ivory comb signifies that she has learned to combine the freedom of V with the ability to play the wife, end quote. And J. Cary Grant continues, if we believe that Paula's promise to sit home and wait for Pappy is sincere, this view may be justified. However, we might equally suppose that Paula's use of V's comb as a token of her feelings is a warning to the reader, though not to Pappy, that her promise is tempered by the same provisional overtones that attend all of V's love affairs. I'm not really sure that explains much here about the character's decision, but I guess she is married to him.
Yeah, it's very unclear. I guess we see the argument in the next section between Paula and Profane that leads to this, but that doesn't clear anything up either. Like there is no, like, they're arguing about it, but you don't hear either of their sides.
Yeah, and like, what happened to McClintock's fear?
When did we last see McClintock?
They were together.
Like,
they were going like they were driving like upstate or to Massachusetts.
In love.
Yeah, that was Keep Cool But Care. That was the last time we saw McClintock.
I liked McClintock and Paula.
I did too. They seemed happy together. They seemed like an actual good match.
So Pappy Hod's first name is Robert. That was very jarring for me.
Robert.
I just have to throw out. So I should probably have looked this up earlier, but just for folks that are interested in digging deeper into the Kilroy diagram, the Wikipedia page on Kilroy like dives extremely deep.
How many times?
Well, it's like sometimes credited as one of the first like big international memes.
Yeah, there's a lot more going on here than I had thought with Kilroy, and I feel like I need to read this.
Can you do a Control F on bandpass filter?
There is, yeah. There's a whole section on the bandpass filter.
What?
Actually, I know. I was like, wait a minute.
Well, now I gotta. Well, this is a bad time to start reading Wikipedia for the first time.
It is, yeah. So I got a little distracted. I feel like we may need to cycle back around to this, but
yeah, this is a lengthy page.
It's very lengthy. There's like a little bit more going on than I had thought. I feel like I need to. I got here because I looked up the Watt no petrol that was scrolled next to the Kilroy. Like what? No petrol? I guess is what it's supposed to.
Yep.
Be. Anyways, I feel like I need a little more time to make sense of this than maybe we have sitting here.
Well, we'll return to Kilroy when we wrap back around in the epilogue.
Yeah, ask any questions about Kilroy for the Q&A. Or bandpass filters.
Maybe we meet James J. Kilroy, American shipyard inspector, in the epilogue. We'll see.
Intriguing. I'm going to dive deeper into this between now and the next episode. So maybe I'll have more to say on Kilroy.
Hope so.
So we get a little summary of the wild little road trip that Stencil, Benny, and Paula took to get to Malta, including a stolen Renault and a variety of Pynchon-esque characters.
This is fun.
poets, and yeah.
Not a single mention of pasta for the cookbook. There's so many times that we could have had Stencil's carbonara and it didn't happen.
I might have rather read 30 pages of this than the 30 pages in Valletta we got, but, you know, Pynchon knows what he's doing. I trust him.
Didn't you just say that he didn't know what he was doing, you felt, in this chapter?
Yeah, it's a flip and a flop. Andrew, do you want to take credit for calling that?
I called it, y'all. I called it so good. You guys didn't believe me. You hadn't even picked up on that one sentence. And I read that and I was like, oh, they've got to be siblings. And sure enough.
Yeah, Andrew, we got dozens of emails about like, there's no way Andrew is correct. This can't possibly be true.
To all my haters, you're just fans having a bad day.
Do you want to say actually what you called? We have not actually said the thing you called yet, which is...
so when Stencil and Fausto meet, Fausto refers to Stencil as his brother, which is what I called in the Confessions of Fausto chapter. That Sidney was sleeping with his mom.
Possibly. We'll never know.
I would... the EOG style reading comprehension test, I could have killed that if it was who is Fausto's father.
How many of those little, like, what was it called, the little quizzes you took after reading library books, that AR test or something?
Oh, yeah.
You like got points.
The accelerated reader program.
The accelerated reader program. Yeah, I want to take the accelerated reader test for V. For V. I bet it's worth a lot of points. I bet I could get a pizza slice for this one. So Stencil goes through the whole history of V to Fausto Maestral. Pynchon writes, at one point in Mondagin's story, Maestral said, the glass eye, which I found so funny as a person who literally had that exact discussion on a podcast recorded for all time.
I feel like the way I envision this is that Stencil did not explain it didn't give a preface as to why he was telling this story. He just assumed Maestral knew about the conspiracy. And so like 2/3 of the way through this story, he's like, oh, I see why you're telling me this. Like, it's clicking for me why I'm being told this story.
Yeah.
I feel like Stencil is having a little bit of a rough time here. Like, I feel like Stencil has been building towards this climax of like returning to Malta. And he's like quickly realizing as he talks with Maestral that like perhaps he's not going to get all the answers that he is so seeking.
He is a little bit going like, you know, when I say it out loud,
it sounds a little crazy.
It's a tepid interaction. I think Stencil, every time he changes cities, is probably like, this is it, we're doing it, I figured it out, and he keeps going. Like, he's not going to stop, right? Until he wouldn't stop if he met V on the street.
That's like he gets to this point and it really is a dead end. Like, this is the end of the story. Like, he's kind of wrapped all the way back around. She's dead. That's the end of the story. Maestral is like, you're not going to dig up the cellar. It's like probably at the foundation of another building at this point. And Stencil is like not okay with that. And Stencil's like,
you know anyone who sells shovels?
He's like, let's find the parts of her body. Like, who took her eye?
What am I going to do with these teeth?
Yeah, like I have to reassemble V, or like he's just like he can't handle it being the end.
It's kind of sad. I wasn't expecting to feel sad for Herbert Stencil, but he does become like a more pitiful character as we kind of go on here.
Yeah, he really wanted like a neat and tidy conclusion to this, and he said it's strengthening a long suspicion that it did add up only to the recurrence of an initial and a few dead objects. And it doesn't mean that he's like wrong necessarily. Like, he seems to have pieced together some things, but there's no grand, discovery to happen here. There's just sort of like a dead woman / cyborg. There's no end to the road.
Yeah, he starts repeating to himself eventually this phrase, events seem to be ordered in an ominous logic. but then he just keeps stressing different parts of that sentence over and over. So he's like, events seem to be ordered in an ominous logic. Events seem to be ordered in an ominous logic.
Events seem to be ordered in an ominous logic.
Yeah. But he gets a lead. Bless his heart, he gets another lead.
Like, where there were no more leads to be found, he, like, learns about, like, the child who took the eye when they were disassembling V.
He goes around to pawn shops, like, asking for silver body parts.
Yeah, and then, like, goes, like, tracks her down, and, like, she's like, I threw it into the ocean. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Mistral has a, quote, growing theory that V was an obsession after all, and that such an obsession is a hothouse, constant temperature, windless, too crowded with party-colored sports, unnatural blooms. So he goes to talk to Father Avalanche, who does show up again. That's a character I wasn't expecting to show back up. He's like, you know what? You really should have talked to the guy who had this job before me.
Father Faring.
Oh my god, dude. I did not see this coming.
Nearly has a stroke.
I nearly had a stroke. I was like, I swear I've heard the name Father Faring before, but where?
I do like that he starts talking about it to Benny, who's like, oh yeah, I shot like a weird albino alligator in Father Faring's parish one time.
I was laughing out loud, and it says Stencil froze, the booze jittering in his glass. So he's like, oh God, Benny's going to tell me the story of when Benny shot me when I was pretending to be an alligator.
You mean when Stencil was pretending to be an alligator?
Yes, when Stencil was pretending to be an alligator.
When Benny shot Stencil.
Stencil leaves right after this.
He's like, he's
hot on the trail.
What trail?
Well, so he says...
Well, now he's convinced that... He takes this story and says... And he spins it that it was not a coincidence, or it's not just like a rinky-dink unfortunate happenstance that Profane shot Stencil, but that V is in fact possessed Profane and is presumably, I guess, in Stencil's mind, hunting him because he goes to get Fausto to exercise with an O, Benny.
Yeah, like Stencil cannot accept like the reality of the situation or like the conclusion of this story or the idea that like, you know, history and all these events that he's learned about may not be explained neatly by V. And so he's like inventing like a possession at this point. And I guess bolstering his theory, Profane has had like sort of a horrible fever since arriving in Malta and has just been sort of like convalescing in the flop house that they've been staying in.
Yeah, V's is a country of coincidence ruled by a ministry of myth whose emissaries haunt this century's streets. If the coincidences are real, then Stencil has never encountered history at all, but something far more appalling.
Yeah, he has this realization, just like the other characters, like he has this realization, and then he's like, no, we can't. That can't be true. We got to figure something else out. Maybe this glass eye, Father Faring. Let's go to Stockholm.
Yeah. Mistral references, I think this is the second or third reference in this book, to the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, the like anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that the world is secretly ruled by a cabal of rabbis, when he says, yes, 13 of us rule the world in secret.
Yeah, he's kind of fed up with Stencil just like keeps showing up at his apartment at like odd hours of the night to like talk this through. And he's like, Stencil, could you please stop haunting me? So I think he's a little fed up with Stencil at this point.
Yeah, and Fausto asks him like, what would make you satisfied here? Like, do you want to exercise like the entire Western world of the influence of V? I guess the answer is in the affirmative in Stencil's case. So he writes a note, speaking of sort of men writing notes to people and talking about their world journeys, he heads off to Stockholm with a little note left on top of Benny.
Yeah, this reminded me of the note that the elder Godolphin left his son sort of like wrapped on the cigarette.
But it's also the kind of note that the elder Stencil left present Stencil, which is just like, here's all my notes and records.
Yeah, it's sort of like these men who like develop these like obsessions with a person or a place,
with a certain kind of unknowable woman.
Yeah, like to try to explain like these like other event, like the chaos of the world that's going on around them.
I mean, to some extent, this is like, I think Pynchon, who is credited often for being like a master of the conspiracy novel, understands that at the bottom of a lot of conspiracy theories, you know, look at the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, like at the bottom of a bunch of conspiracy theories is like anti-Semitism, or like, surely there's a woman behind this somewhere. Like there is a real dangerous othering edge to conspiracy theorizing gone off the rails that I think Pynchon's very aware of. This book is kind of all about that.
Well, it's kind of interesting, like Stencil's like, well, there's this woman V that's behind all of this, but like V sort of like disintegrates, like in a very literal way. Like the world is still happening and V has sort of like dissolved, and all that Stencil has is like this set of dentures. And so I don't know, like this idea of this force that he's been holding on to has just sort of like completely fallen into pieces.
So Stencil's on the tail of a Madame Viola, a neuromancer and hypnotist.
New V.
A new V.
Yeah, so I take from this that like Stencil is just he was not satisfied with like his story coming to an end. I think that's why he never wanted to go to Malta in the first place.
Because it would probably end.
Yeah, and he had to invent a new beginning.
Yeah.
So he keeps doing the same thing he's been doing all along and leaves Profane sort of in Maestral's charge.
So that Profane can keep doing the thing he's been doing the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So what's Profane get up to?
Well, Maestral gives him $5.
Woohoo.
That's a lot of money.
He puts on a big cowboy hat and a suede jacket and Levi's.
He's looking good.
Yeah, he's bathed, he's shaved.
And he goes out on the town and he meets a nice American girl who wears Bermuda shorts.
Brenda Wigglesworth.
Brenda Wigglesworth.
She's also been sort of a tourist. She's been on her grand tour of Europe, which has had some ups and downs. Hasn't gone exactly as she expected, but she owns 72 pairs of Bermuda shorts, half of which she brought with her to Europe. So ostensibly, she is here with a suitcase of 31 pairs of Bermuda shorts.
Yep. Beaver
36 pairs of Bermuda shorts.
Thank you, Andrew.
Beaver College is the former name of Arcadia University in Cheltenham Township, Pennsylvania, I learned. I sort of thought that Beaver College was made up, but it's real. Or was real.
I promise I can do math.
We all know you can.
The listeners might not. I just want to make sure they know.
We did a great job eventually figuring out the math in that one episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Andrew knows about that. Andrew, we found out that the equation in the Fausto chapter is just the catenary equation. So like a parabolic equation, it's just like the basic equation for a catenary. And I appended a little note in the audio of that episode to be like, we figured it out. Don't worry.
We later
Pynchon
did
pals.
more robust research and that's good.
Pynchon pals, in which I frequently sound like I'm worse at math than I actually am.
It's hard to do math on a podcast.
I'm realizing that.
If you've never done math on a podcast, it's serious labor.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe I should avoid doing math on the podcast in the future, just for the sake of my like international reputation.
So Benny's with Brenda. Again, I really do think this is kind of she is a waspy version of young Rachel, sort of like college girl or just out of college girl who's a little bit like, wow, you were in the Navy and you sort of like don't really have a home per se and you just do little odd jobs. That's cool. That's interesting. She says at one point, you've done so much more. Boys do. You've had all these fabulous experiences. I wish mine would show me something.
She's a poet.
She's a poet. She has a very, J. Cary Grant notes, like Walt Whitman-esque poem of like, I am the 20th century.
But it's about like all of the themes again. I feel like
it's about all of the themes in the book, yeah.
Which is like maybe if we're like continuing this reading of Pynchon, like sort of asking things about himself as a writer, because she kind of reads this poem that like relists all the themes of the book, and then she's like, I don't know, it's a phony college girl poem. And this is like sort of the last chapter of the book. Like it feels almost like Pynchon is sort of asking whether he's written a good book after all.
Yeah.
I like this book overall, just to be clear to the listeners. I've really enjoyed the read so far, but I do feel like Pynchon is kind of poking a little fun at himself there.
There is, I think, Benny's kind of last meditation on Rachel here in this section, where he's thinking about the gut and Valletta and the scaffold having probably left. I think you mentioned this earlier, Andrew. But Benny thinks to himself, it made him sadder, as if all his homes were temporary, and even they inanimate, still wandering as he. For motion is relative, and hadn't he now really stood there still on the sea like a Schlemiel redeemer, while that enormous malingering city, and its one livable inner space, and one unconnable, therefore high-value girl, had all slid away from him over a great horizon's curve, comprising, from this vantage at once, at least 1 century's worth of wavelets. Just like there was one girl in one city, but he truly believes himself to be like stuck still in place as like the world just recedes from him.
Yeah, and in that way, like he is kind of inanimate.
Mm-hmm.
Like he has stripped himself of his own agency.
Not unlike V.
It's interesting that he's not the one moving on. Like the passivity of him being stuck in place and things moving around him versus him just living a life that is propelling himself forward and away from other people.
Yeah.
That's very Schlemiel thinking, I think, to be like, these things are, it's happening to me. It's not my actions causing any of this.
So it's very like physics problem, like relative to the yo-yo. Like, what is the movement of the hand?
The hand moves relative to the yo-yo. Yeah, smart.
I feel like it calls back to the very violent end to the 2 chapters ago, where we see like there's this question of whether it was a suicide or an accident, whether this is just something that like happened to Melanie or something that she sort of made happen and like had agency in. And I feel like that's the whole Benny Profane question, where he's like, oh, I think he actually has no agency in the world. It's just happening to him, a series of accidents.
Well, it also feels like maybe this is a reason like why he joins the Navy. Like if you're on a ship, you are effectively stuck in place while other things are moving. Like you're moving, but you're also kind of stuck in the same place. You can't yo-yo on a ship. I mean, you can yo-yo like Benny does, sort of painting the broad side of the ship or whatever up and down, but like he seems to appreciate that kind of enclosure.
And if we're all on a ship floating over the sine waves of history, are we ever able to break out of these sort of cycles of violence?
Not Benny, because what happens to Benny? First, we return here to him saying, well, Brenda asks him the experience, haven't you learned? And we get back to what I referenced earlier. Profane didn't have to think long. No, he said, offhand, I'd say I haven't learned a goddamn thing. And then she sort of manic pixie dream girls him into a late night run through the streets of Malta as every light in the city sort of flickers out.
It felt reminiscent to the end of Fausto, and like right before Fausto or like Elena dies at the end of that chapter of them running around. I don't know if they're really running, but they're on like an extended stroll.
Yeah, we have kind of this like series of cinematic ends. There's also the one after Fopple's chapter where they're like riding off into the sunset.
Mm-hmm.
This book likes just like sending characters into the wild blue yonder, or in this case, the absolute night, which again, I think references that like what is hiding behind the curtain of night from the previous chapter. They're running towards these things behind the curtain, toward the edge of Malta and the Mediterranean beyond. The epilogue is 1919. I think this is the end of Benny Profane.
Yeah. We didn't mention that he asks Fausto if they hire foreigners because he's looking for a road job.
That's true.
But he's just going to stay in Malta and do construction.
I mean, he'll get back to New York eventually.
Yo-yo.
The yo-yo string is not broken. It's a state of mind, but he's still in it.
He might find Rachel again eventually and then float away.
Yep. God.
Oh, Benny.
I feel like this book has been like a very like sort of scathing critique of this sort of like decadence and these like cycles. And I was kind of hoping like we would see someone break through or like some optimism for like a different way.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not seeing that yet. Everyone's just like, they've had their realizations and they've gone back to exactly what they were doing at the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
Even Paula like goes back to Pappy Hod. Rachel has a new Schlemiel to care for. Like Benny has gone back and is doing the exact same thing, but in a new city.
Pig didn't even
Stencil
leave the Navy.
Pig didn't even leave the Navy. Like Stencil's back to doing the same thing.
It's rough out here for the whole sick crew. To be continued and concluded in the very next episode of Pynchon Pals, where we'll be reading the epilogue and also talking about our broader thoughts of the book. Not to be confused with our Q&A episode, which will be the one after that.
Exactly.
Any final closing thoughts here?
I guess I'm excited, but like, let's see what happens. I don't even know. I don't know what's going to happen.
I have no expectations for the epilogue of this book. I don't know what it would cover.
I'm hoping it does something for me.
1919 is when the disturbances were. We're going to find out what actually happened to Surely.
I guess that's true.
Okay,
we must find out what happens to Sidney Stencil.
We thought the Valletta chapter was going to be finally find out what Herbert Stencil gets up to in Malta, and then he doesn't really do that. So this could be we're finally going to find out what happens to Sidney Stencil, and it's just 39 pages about some BS and then one page that mentions Sidney Stencil.
I hope we get something.
Is this going to be a Stencil chapter? Is this going to be like hard, like, take with a grain of salt, you think? Or you think it's just going to, who knows?
From the files of Victoria Wren. My side of the story.
Mildred tells all.
Mildred tells all.
Every other character has come back except for Mildred, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
For Stencil's eyes only.
Okay, well, thank y'all for listening to Pynchon Pals. Thank you to Andrew Tillett.
Thank you, guys.
And to Duri Long.
Thank you all.
For joining me. Ooh, the sun is bright as I'm exiting the Susanna Squaducci. Anybody down for some cheese danishes?
I'm feeling a little seasick, actually.
Oh, I gotta go catch a bus, guys. I'll see you later.
Make sure to save the label on your cheese Danish.
If you like what we're doing, that was really good.
Yeah.
If you like what we're doing here, we'd love it if you left us a review on Apple Podcasts or on your podcatcher of choice. On the next episode, we'll be reading the aforementioned Epilogue. If you'd like to get in touch with the show or submit a question to be answered on air, you can reach us at pynchonpals@gmail.com. Our theme music is Horology by the inimitable King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, released under a Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives license on the album Polygon Dwanaland. Pynchon Pals is produced and edited by me, Patrick Fiorilli. You can find more of my work alongside my newsletter, Critical Theory Craft, at my website, www.patf.io. Until next time, see you later, alligators.
I hate to report that Prickly Adventures, The Amazing Life of Porcupines was a disappointment.
Don't tell the
It
audience.
was like a fully AI-generated YouTube video.
Have you guys watched that new Pangolin documentary? I really want to watch this Pangolin documentary that came out.
No.
There's some documentary, I think it's on Netflix.
What do we learn about pangolins? I feel like I read a lot about pangolins around the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic when no one thought it was going to become a big thing.
It seems like this documentary is like about pangolin conservation, but specifically they have one there's a specific pangolin that's like living in the house with them, and it's just an absolute menace.
Patrick has an unfortunate tendency to like pause on videos of like animals that are in people's houses that I feel like are oftentimes like very exploitative. Like Patrick will be like, look at this cute cat. And I'm like, that is like a bobcat in someone's kitchen. That is not a regular cat.
Look, everyone wants like a pet elephant. This is true. You can't have one, but everyone wants one. And we can accept it. Doesn't make us bad people to want a big fun pet elephant.
It turns out like in the United States, like you can own a lot of animals that you would not think that you can own. I'm not encouraging
Is
that,
it time
but
to go back and rewatch Tiger King with fresh eyes? Can you
Let's watch Tiger
watching
King
Tiger King
for
again?
Tips on how to do it. Good. Tiger. Wow. I just watched Eddington talking about early pandemic. Tiger King, I don't even think it's referenced. It should have been.